Chapter 51:22. She even smiled brightly at Demon Palace. Don't forget, Sir Demon Palace, you're keeping us here not to question us, but to repay our gratitude. The young lady's long and narrow eyes were filled with radiance. Demon Palace's expression sunk even further. Yiqing Luo was fearless as she continued. So, Sir Demon Palace, why don't you talk about your motive? Demon Palace's expression congealed. What motive do I have? I'll have to ask Sir Demon Palace about this. The young lady intentionally emphasized on the word sir. It was obviously a form of respect, but from the young lady's words, there was an inexplicable sense of sarcasm. Demon Palace's face turned cold. I don't understand what you mean. I thought. Sir Demon Palace came up with all sorts of questions, so you're going to be honest with us. Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue as she shook her head. Since Sir Demon Palace wants to continue acting dumb, then treat it as if I've never asked. Be honest? Demon Palace murmured these four words as a cold glint flashed past his eyes. What can you tell me? Yiqing Luo tilted her head as she propped her chin as she pondered seriously. Perhaps. I can tell you, where's the real overlord? The cold glint in Demon Palace's eyes intensified as a glint of resentment flashed past. Was this young lady doing this on purpose? She almost got married to the fake overlord. How would she dare to meet the real overlord? Wasn't it embarrassing? Did she still have any face all right? Demon Palace seriously suspected that this young lady was humiliating him. Perhaps we can help you achieve what you want. DMO Xian opened his mouth calmly, cutting off Yiqing Luo's teasing words. His gaze was indifferent. What does Demon Palace think about what I want? Demon Palace sneered. Then tell me, what do I want? Youth power. DMO Xian's reply was very straightforward, without any hesitation. His deep black eyes were as dark as a deep pool, and the devil region. When DMO Xian mentioned the first two words, Demon Palace's expression had already changed. When the last two words were spoken, her brows were tightly knitted as she stared at DMO Xian with some probing and suspicion. On what basis do I believe that you have this ability? You have no choice but to believe. DMO Xian replied indifferently. You have no other choice. Such a nonchalant attitude was simply arrogant in front of the arrogant Devil Hall. However, the demonic hall did not do anything. She clasped her fingers together and her body tensed up. She was trying her best to suppress her anger. Only when his emotions had stabilized did he speak coldly. I have many choices. Why did I choose you? What a joke. If there were so many choices, the both of us husband and wife wouldn't have appeared here. DMO Xian lifted his eyelids slightly. What's Lord Devil Palace's decision? Silence. There was dead silence. After an unknown period of time, in the end, it was the Demon Hall who spoke, breaking this strange atmosphere. She asked, what do you want to know? The secret of the Nether Palace. In the demonic domain. DMO Xian's deep eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the demonic palace. When these words left his mouth, the woman froze for a moment. She pursed her red lips tightly as the haze in her eyes dispersed. I don't know what you're talking about. You can go back and consider it carefully. By then, you can tell me your answer. DMO Xian was neither fast nor slow, as though he had already expected the demonic palace's reaction. Chapter 51:23. It was this kind of nonchalant attitude. On the contrary, it made one feel that what demonic palace's answer was not important to him, as though everything was within his control. Demonic Palace didn't know why, but she felt that the man in front of her wasn't as obedient and harmless as he looked. He wasn't just a God Realm aristocrat who had nurtured such an imposing manner, just a gaze or a simple syllable. That was enough to shock her. This imposing manner, it was innate, and there was an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Somehow she felt as though she had seen it somewhere before. Demonic Palace pursed his lips tightly. His cold and gloomy face was filled with complicated emotions. After that, he turned around and left without a word, until he was far away. Yiqing Luo carried little Nine and stood up. Are you so sure that she will tell us everything she knows truthfully? She won't. Dmo Xian stretched out his hand towards her. His obedient and harmless face wasn't as cold and emotionless as it was tainted with a gentle smile. You can only believe half of her words. So she will definitely choose us, right? Yiqing Luo walked over and buried her body into his arms. Dmo Xian smiled. Her choice isn't important. Right from the start, Dmo Xian didn't believe Demonic Palace at all. But if Demonic Palace was willing to say a little, he would be able to deduce many things from it. But even if Demonic Palace wasn't willing to say, at most it would just be more troublesome for him. In fact, it was indeed as what Dmo Xian said. That night, when Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian were already resting, a creak sound was heard outside the window. Demonic Palace snuck into the room. Yiqing Luo, who had just laid down, what happened in the day had already made her mentally exhausted. Now, she wasn't even allowed to sleep properly at night. Wasn't this Demonic Palace too energetic? It seemed that she, the bride, was the most tired in the day. Luckily, the both of them knew that they were surrounded by spies, so they slept in their clothes. When she heard the sound, Yiqing Luo had already sat up and leaned against the headboard as she glanced lazily at Demonic Palace. I say, Sir Demonic Palace, you're a dignified Sir Demonic Palace. Isn't it a little inappropriate to climb into our room in the middle of the night? The moonlight was like water, and the Demon Palace, who was dressed in a crow-feathered black robe, stood in the room as a pair of icy-cold, beautiful eyes stared fixedly at Yiqing Luo. The young girl yawned. Her posture was very indifferent. You should at least consider it. We are husband and wife. It's really inappropriate for you to climb the window without saying a word. But, after all, the Devil Hall Lord's wedding was called off halfway through. He doesn't understand this logic. I'll reluctantly forgive you. The girl's voice was soft, and her tone was languid. Every single word stabbed into the heart of the Demon Hall. The Demon Hall was so angry that his complexion turned extremely unsightly. Under the dim light, he looked extremely malevolent. She clenched her fists tightly, her killing intent bursting forth. A clear voice suppressed all the undercurrents in the room. Has the Devil Hall thought it through? Dmo Xian lit a candlestick and sat on the chair, which was shrouded in a layer of velvet light. The Demon Crown Prince suppressed his anger and walked over. This Crown Prince does not know much. These words indicated that she had agreed to Dmo Xian's conditions. Devil Region. More than half of the forces belong to Secluded Palace, right? Dmo Xian didn't beat around the bush as he asked directly. The Demon Hall muttered to himself for a moment, yes. This wedding, I'm afraid it's arranged by Secluded Palace? Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly as she asked with a smile. Trash, seventh young mistress. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash, seventh young mistress. Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5124. Devil Hall's cold eyes sunk as he took a look at Yiqing Luo, not really wanting to answer her question. However, Dmo Xian had no intention to speak again. It was obvious that he wanted her to answer the girl's question. The Demon Royal Highness pursed her red lips and coldly said, yes. Yiqing Luo put on a curious look. Then do you know that the groom is a fake overlord? The young girl's face was delicate and sweet. When she blinked her long and narrow eyes, she looked completely harmless. He seemed to be asking casually. The Demon Crown Prince felt his heart being stabbed again. He suppressed his anger and said, this Crown Prince does not know. Then, how did Lord Devil Hall get to know and fall in love with that fake overlord, to the point of getting married? Yiqing Luo's face was filled with gossip. The demonic sovereign frowned and looked at Lin Ma Xuan. This sovereign is here to discuss cooperation with young Master Chao. However, the man had no intention of opening his mouth. That pair of eyes that were as blue as water stared at the young girl with doting eyes. It seemed that as long as the girl was happy, he wouldn't have any objections. In other words, if the Devil Hall wanted to discuss things properly, they would have to go through with it. He had to satisfy the girl's curiosity. The demon princess's fingers tightened as she replied, and that person, only met for the first time when we decided to get married. In other words, there was no emotional foundation at all, and they were going to get married immediately. Yiqing Luo sat up straight and scooped Nine up from the side, hugging him in her arms. Look at it in detail, the marriage between you and that fake overlord from Gloomy Palace. The demonic palace was silent for a moment. He stared at the nine-tailed fox in the girl's arms for a long time before he slowly spoke about the marriage. The Gloomy Palace and the Demon Hall had colluded long ago. The reason was that the Gloomy Palace had promised the Demon Hall to help her rule over the Demon Realm and become the one and only ruler of the Demon Realm. Just a few days ago, the Palace of Gloomy Shadows suddenly came looking for her. He wanted her to marry Dizun, and he even announced it to the entire Demon Realm. He wanted everyone in the Demon Realm to know about it. The Demonic Hall did not agree at first, but the Anyo Palace tempted her with the identity of a venerable sovereign. In this world, which woman did not want to marry a venerable sovereign who was like a god? If the Demon Realm could ally with the Imperial Palace, with the help of Dizun, her status would definitely rise along with it. It would be even easier for him to achieve his goal. In the end, the Devil Hall agreed to marry Dizun. It was at that time. This was the first time she had been in close contact with the legendary overlord. The demonic palace knew that there must be a reason why the Palace of Gloomy Shadows asked her to marry Dizun for no reason. After that, there was news from the Demon Phoenix continent that someone was planning to travel thousands of miles to the Demon Head City to snatch the bride. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness ordered her to keep a close eye on the person who wanted to kidnap the bride. Hearing Devil Palace's words, Yiqing Luo touched her chin as she lowered her eyes in deep thoughts. The words of the Demon Hall confirmed her previous guess. The Gloomy Palace was using this wedding ceremony to lure her out, especially when this identity of hers had turned the Anshu Hall upside down in the God world and killed an elder of the Jiang clan. Now, he had come to the demon domain to kidnap the bride. It was no wonder that the Palace of Darkness would suspect her. After understanding these matters, Yiqing Luo put on a solemn expression as she looked towards the Devil Hall. Lastly, I want to ask a very serious question. The Devil Palace frowned as he looked at her. Yiqing Luo maintained her solemn expression as she said word by word. You really don't have any other thoughts towards Dizun? Devil Hall. The corners of her eyes twitched as she didn't want to answer Yiqing Luo's question as she turned her head towards Immerse. Chapter 5125. Young Master Chao, I've already answered everything that needs to be answered. Shouldn't you show me your sincerity now? DMO Xian finally had some reaction. He glanced sideways. His clear blue eyes were emotionless as he met her gaze. He asked indifferently, Do you know the final plan of Abyss Palace? Demon Palace frowned. Before asking me questions, shouldn't you show your sincerity first? DMO Xian continued. Once Demon Head City takes control of the demon region, do you think Abyss Palace will let you live? If Abyss Palace wants to take my life, let's see if they have a chance. Demon Palace's eyes turned sharp. No. DMO Xian's red lips curled into a mocking smile. Demon Palace lowered his eyes to hide the turbulent waves in his eyes. She wasn't sure. As for Abyss Palace, she didn't know much about them. Even if she wanted to investigate, she couldn't find anything. Abyss Palace was too mysterious, especially the person behind the scenes. Even after working together so many times, she had never seen the person behind the scenes. If the other party really wanted to quietly take her life, in fact, it wasn't like he didn't have a chance. So, she had always been wary of Abyss Palace. She wouldn't completely trust Abyss Palace. Especially, the Palace of Tenyu even found a fake venerable emperor to marry her. This was totally pushing her out, using her as a tool, to let her publicize her marriage ceremony with the DMO Xian, to spread it to the ears of the real DMO Xian. Wouldn't she be the one to take the blame in the end? She absolutely believed. The Gloomy Palace would definitely not help her at all. She was afraid that Abyss Palace was planning to kill her with a borrowed knife. I exposed the fake DMO Xian's identity, stopped you from getting married, and gave you a chance to live. Is that not sincerity? Dmo Xian's eyes were calm. His tone was indifferent, without the slightest fluctuation of emotions. Yet it gives one a powerful and convincing feeling. Demon Palace actually had a kind of the feeling of his words are very reasonable. The Demon King did not retort. He said coldly, I don't know much about what you want to find out from me. After all, the Palace of Gloomy Darkness has never trusted me. Yiqing Luo was very clear about Palace of Abyss's sinister and cunning nature. He didn't expect this demon hall to be able to get any good news from the Dark Netherworld Palace. However, after all, he was the Lord of Devilhead City's Devil Hall. They had brains too. In the process of working with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness, he would find many clues that would be beneficial to him in case the other party betrayed him. Therefore, the Demon Hall definitely had a lot of information about the Dark Nether Palace. The Demon Hall said, although I'm not too sure why the Gloomy Palace chose to help me unify the Demon Domain, I do know some things. Previously, you asked me about the secret of Tenyu Palace in the Demon Domain. I guess that it should be considered a secret of Tenyu Palace. Under the enticement of the Netherworld Palace, the Demon Palace agreed to cooperate with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. With the help of the Dark Nether Palace, they indeed managed to subdue a few large factions without much effort. Very quickly, they invaded the hidden forces of the other 3 demon continents. After tasting the sweetness, the Demon Palace was assured, as they completely threw themselves into the cooperation with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. But as 1/3 of the forces in the Demon Domain were in their hands, the Palace of Gloomy Darkness gradually retreated from the battlefield. He would only provide assistance from time to time. Chapter 51:26. It seemed as though they were intentionally leaving her hanging, as though they were telling her, without the Gloomy Palace, she was nothing, subtly influencing her thoughts, attempting to control her thoughts. For the Demonic Palace to be able to sit in their current position, they naturally weren't fools. After a few similar actions, she sensed something amiss. She had always been curious about the real motive for the Gloomy Palace to help her take control of the Devil region. After that, she started to investigate. There was one time when the Gloomy Palace came forward to help solve a powerhouse's problem. The Demonic Palace personally took action and discovered that the Gloomy Palace had established a secret powerhouse in a secluded area in the Devil region, which even they, the Demonic Palace, didn't know about. After a few rounds of investigation, the Demonic Palace discovered an extremely strange matter. That secret powerhouse's location would be secretly transported over 100 cultivators by the Gloomy Palace's disciples every day. But they had never seen those cultivators appear. Yes, cultivators. In the Devil region, everyone they saw were from the Devil region. The energy they used was different from the outside world's profound energy. It wasn't that the Devil region didn't allow outsiders to step in, but the Gloomy Palace inexplicably transported so many cultivators over and over again. Were they intending to make use of the outside world's cultivators to form an army to invade the Devil region? There was this thought. The Demonic Palace didn't act rashly to alert the enemy as they continued to feign civility with the Gloomy Palace. But they continued to investigate in secret. In the end, they more or less discovered something. For example, those cultivators, after wave, were sent into the secret powerhouse. None of them survived, and their corpses didn't even have cherry blossoms. Another example was that every time a cultivator was transported into the secret powerhouse, there would be a sound of chanting incantations. The Demonic Palace didn't dare to investigate too deeply in case they were detected by the Gloomy Palace. After listening to the Demonic Palace's secret powerhouse, Yiqing Luo was playing with Nine's furry tails as she asked puzzledly, "Where is that secret powerhouse at? Why not bring us over to take a look?" The Demonic Palace's beautiful eyes glanced at Yiqing Luo as her voice was filled with ridicule. "Perhaps Mr. Chow can take a look, but if we bring you along, I'm afraid before we even get close, we will be detected by the people from the Gloomy Palace." Yi Qing Luo tilted her head, vividly displaying the image of an ignorant young lady. I have my husband to protect me. What's there to be afraid of? After that, she smiled like a flower and looked at Dmo Xian. If we're discovered by the people from the Palace of Darkness, at most we will just destroy the secret base of the Palace of Darkness. Right, husband? The demon hall sneered. What do you think that is? Do you think you can destroy it just because you want to? These words had just left his mouth. Then, she heard a clear and mellow voice say one word in a gentle and loving manner. Okay, the demonic palace. Forgive her, who had her marriage broken off, for not understanding such feelings. She flicked her sleeves and spat out 3 words, Vanquish Mountain. Then, he turned around and dashed out of the bed, disappearing from the room. Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue, so boring, totally unable to take the teasing. All right, he has left. You should take a rest. Dmo Xian got up and returned to Yi Qing Luo's side. He flicked his sleeves. The window was closed, and the candle was extinguished. He pulled her into his arms as he laid down to rest. Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes as she recalled the demonic palace's words in her mind. What do you think the Palace of Darkness is up to? Dmo Xian's mellow voice floated down from the top of her head, as gentle as a feather, as it tickled her heartstrings. Perhaps. There are quite a number of Palace of Darkness's hidden secrets hidden here. He laughed lightly. Won't we find out tomorrow what secret it is? Chapter 51:27. Yi Qing Luo's little head wiggled restlessly. Somehow I feel that you seem to know the secret of the Palace of Darkness. Dmo Xian pressed her head. Want to know? I can't guess it. My heart is so stifled that I can't sleep. Yi Qing Luo used her head to bump against his palm as she spoke coquettishly. The man laughed softly. His chest heaved up and down. His hand gently covered the back of the young lady's head, curling her soft, fine hair as he spoke in a warm voice. I'm just guessing and have no evidence. But I think the secret of the Palace of Darkness is related to the mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness. His lips curled, perhaps, in the Devil region. We will be able to meet the mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness who had been hiding in the dark. Yi Qing Luo's eyes widened as her little head lifted up and met his eyes. What you mean is, the mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness is in the Devil region. Amen. Dmo Xian nodded. Perhaps the reason why the Jiang family's aristocrats stopped us from heading to the Devil region. Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue as her face was filled with astonishment. We've been trying to find out where the mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness is hiding. I'd not expected to actually hide in the Devil region. If it wasn't for the fact that we followed the profound flame W map to the Devil region, we might never discover this point. Wait, Yi Qing Luo's teasing expression congealed. She frowned. The profound flame W map directed us to the Devil region, and the mastermind behind the Palace of Darkness is also in the Devil region. There shouldn't be any connection, right? Dmo Xian had no intention to satisfy her curiosity as he once again covered her head with his broad palm and pressed her into his embrace. All right, sleep. I'm curious. If you don't tell me clearly, I won't be able to sleep. Yi Qing Luo still wanted to struggle, but the man whispered a threat into her ear. Yi Qing Luo decisively cowered as she obediently shut her eyes. The next morning, the Devil Hall was here again. Yi Qing Luo sincerely felt that this woman didn't need to rest at all and was so energetic. She was suspecting if the Devil Hall had taken a fancy to her Chao Yun, so they kept sticking to her. She expressed that there was a possibility. After all, whether it was before or after the disguise, her man was so outstanding that she couldn't close her legs. You guys want to go to the Devil Extermination Mountain? This was the first thing the Devil Hall said after they arrived. Yi Qing Luo was leisurely eating the breakfast that the servants had brought up and feeding little Nine at the same time, without even raising her head. Why? Lord Devil Hall also wants to go. Yes, the Devil Hall replied straightforwardly. His Highness wants to go with you. Go and inform them. Yiqing Luo raised her head at this moment as she looked towards the Devil Hall, her eyes filled with ridicule. The Demon Lord's face darkened. Since I have already agreed to help you, why would I inform the gloomy palace? This is called grasping with both hands, stable. Yiqing Luo replied with a beaming smile. Don't tell me that Lord Devil Hall isn't thinking in this way. The Demon Royal Hall's brows twitched, and he frowned ferociously. Even if that was what she thought, she would never admit it. However, this young lady's words were very choking. The Devil Hall walked directly to the dining table and sat down as he raised his hand to pick up a white steamed bun, speaking calmly. Only I know the exact location, so it's more stable for me to bring you there. Yiqing Luo tilted her head, and after taking a look at him, she lowered her head to give Little Nine a tail. The young lady's soft voice was filled with a smile. Then I'll have to trouble Lord Devil Hall. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Lord Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Lord Overlord, please be gentler. Chapter 51:28. Just like that, the Demon Hall's action of taking a bite of the steamed bun froze. He didn't know whether to swallow it or not. His expression was extremely ugly. Why did she feel that had he been tricked by the girl? Yiqing Luo looked at Devil Hall's expression as she couldn't help but gave a low laugh. After the meal, Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian planned to set off. The demonic hall had already ordered people to prepare a demonic ship. Yiqing Luo looked at the devil ship in front of her, which was even more exquisite and luxurious than Madame Huang sees, as she clicked her tongue. Are you certain that heading to Devil Extermination Mountain in such an ostentatious manner will not be detected by the secluded palace? Since the forces of the Dark Nether Palace had already infiltrated the demon region. In that case, he would definitely deploy a large number of informants. This was especially so for this partner, the Demon Hall. They would definitely pay more attention to it. They boarded the demonic ship and headed towards the Devil Destruction Mountain. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness would definitely notice it, right? The Demon Crown Prince leaped into the demonic ship. His cold voice contained a mocking tone as he said, "This Crown Prince is not that stupid." Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian exchanged glances. After that, Dmo Xian stretched out his hand and wrapped it around her slender waist, bringing both of them onto the devil ship. The two of them had just steadied themselves. The devil ship was already moving and floating in midair. The demon royal stood in front of them and said, "The fake venerable sovereign has fled to the southwest. I want to capture him alive and interrogate him about the reason why he pretended to be a venerable sovereign and married me." That understatement made Yiqing Luo raise her opinion of the Devil Hall by a notch. Southwest, in the direction of Devil Destruction Mountain. However, the purpose of the demon ship was to catch the fake venerable sovereign. The Devil Hall needed an excuse to leave Devil Head City. Now, the excuse of being cheated in a marriage was just right. Not only did it dispel the Palace of Gloomy Shadow's suspicions, but it also gave him a chance to leave Devil Head City openly. The speed of the demon ship was extremely fast. Devil Extermination Mountain was a little far from Devil Head City. However, with the reinforcement of the demonic ship, they arrived at a place that was half a day's journey away from Devil Destruction Mountain. Of course, it was impossible for them to directly head towards the Devil Destruction Mountain. If they were to approach Devil Destruction Mountain openly, they would not be able to do so. Even if they were here to catch the fake venerable sovereign, it would definitely raise the vigilance of the Dark Palace. Half a day's walking distance was just right. After the Demon Highness got off the demon ship, he led the demon guards and rushed into the castle town to capture the fake venerable sovereigns. It caused a huge commotion. On the other side, dressed in long black robes, the veiled trio had already stealthily headed in the direction of Devil Destruction Mountain. It was already dusk when they arrived at the castle where they had captured the fake sovereign city. When they finally arrived at Devil Destruction Mountain, the sky was already dark, and the blood-red moon hung in the sky, as if it was dyed with fresh blood. The blood-colored moonlight made Devil Destruction Mountain appear sinister and treacherous. It was as if the entire mountain range was covered in a layer of faint blood-colored light. The Demon Destruction Mountain is known as the land of extreme negative energy in the demon domain. The Devil Hall's voice was cold as he spoke in a low voice. Very few people would come here, so there will definitely be many dangers along the way. Don't cause too much of a commotion. These words were obviously directed at Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo nodded with a beaming smile as she held DMO Xian's arm tightly with both hands. I will follow my husband well and will not drag you down. The Devil Hall looked at her coldly as he led the way in front. The Devil Destruction Mountain, which was known as the land of extreme negative energy, was indeed surrounded by Yin Qi. And this Yin Qi was different from ordinary Yin Qi. It was a kind of hair-raising feeling, as if the entire body was filled with a cold Yin Qi. An even more exaggerated description would be like numerous venomous snakes entangling their bodies and drilling into their bodies. Yi Qing Luo acutely sensed it. This Yin Qi was mixed with an undetectable, profound Yin Qi. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Lord Overlord, please collect it gently. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Lord Overlord, please collect it gently. Chapter 51:29. Although it was very light, very light. However, it was indeed the aura of mysterious Yin Qi. However, he was unable to determine the source of the mysterious Yin Qi from this faint aura. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly, as her little hand, which was tightly clasped with DMO Xian, pinched him. DMO Xian lowered his eyes and met her gaze. Apparently, DMO Xian had already detected this trace of profound Yin Qi. The presence of dark Yin Qi meant that there were indeed traces of the Tenebrous Palace in this Demon Destruction Mountain. At the very least, the Demon Hall did not lie. At a time like this, why are you still looking at each other affectionately? The Demon Palace lowered his voice and said coldly, the entire mountain could be the territory of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. We have to be careful at all times. Yi Qing Luo nodded smilingly. All right, no problem. The Demon Hall felt like it had punched cotton. When faced with a young girl, all the mockery felt as if it couldn't hurt her at all. On the contrary, she was infuriated. Devil Hall kept his emotions in check and couldn't be bothered to look at the two people in front of him. He turned and entered the Devil Destruction Mountain. Yi Qing Luo felt that Devil Destruction Mountain's environment was extremely strange. The entire mountain range was filled with lush forests and trees. The trees were luxuriant and intertwined with each other. The scarlet moonlight cast mottled silhouettes through the branches and leaves, making the scene look somewhat strange. But on the lush mountain range, it was full of vitality. But Yi Qing Luo totally didn't sense any signs of life. Yes, the entire Devil Destruction Mountain did not have a trace of life. Instead, it emitted a bone-chilling aura of death. Mixed with the Yin Qi, there was a sense of déjà vu that made one's scalp tingle. There was something strange about this mountain. They sneaked all the way into the depths of the mountain. The deeper they went in, Yi Qing Luo could feel that the Yin Qi was so dense that it almost drowned her. No matter how prepared she was, at this moment, her delicate body could not help but tremble slightly. What the hell is this place? Had she stepped into the rhythm of hell? How could there be such dense Yin Qi? Yi Qing Luo stuffed herself into DMO Xian's arms. Hugging her Xian, her body warmed up a little. DMO Xian naturally detected Yi Qing Luo's abnormality at the first instance. He looked down at the person in his arms and wrapped his arms around her slender waist. Profound qi spread from his palm and poured into the girl's body. Take out the jade pendant that Feng Liqiong gave you. DMO Xian whispered into her ear. That jade pendant, when she had just arrived in the divine world, Feng Liqiong had specially asked Ji Wuhua to put it on her because she couldn't withstand the spiritual energy of the divine world. She had always been wearing that jade pendant. Yi Qing Luo hooked out that piece of jade from her neck. The man's hand gently held one of her hands. Yiqing Luo only felt a chill on her fingertips. Then, a drop of blood fell on the jade pendant. The warm dark force wrapped around her fingertips. She couldn't feel the slightest bit of pain in her fingers before she was pitifully taken into the man's palm. The jade pendant that was stained with a drop of blood instantly absorbed the drop of blood. Yiqing Luo keenly sensed that the jade pendant vibrated in her palm. There seemed to be a surge of dark light. The next moment, her body was completely covered by the light of the jade pendant. The densing chi in the surroundings totally didn't affect her at all. It was as if she had been completely separated from the aura of the Devil Destruction Mountain. This jade pendant, it could actually be used in this way. Yiqing Luo stared at the jade pendant in her palm as her eyes revealed a faint smile. That little uncle of hers was really a person who was hard on the mouth but soft on the heart. He had obviously said that he had delayed her existence because of Feng-ge. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 51:30. But every single time, he would still stand on her uncle's side, thinking for her sake. Even when she had just arrived at God Realm, they had never interacted before. But in order for her to be safe and sound in God Realm, he placed this jade pendant on her. What are you trying to do now? In front, Demon Palace was already several hundred meters away from them. When she heard that no one was following her, she turned her head and saw the both of them standing on the same spot. She suppressed her anger and turned back. Her sinister, beautiful eyes looked at Yiqing Luo impolitely. We've only walked halfway, and you can't take it anymore? Such a delicate girl. You should have waited in the Demon Palace castle right from the start. Why are you dragging us down? Yiqing Luo glanced at Demon Palace, looking at Demon Palace's expression and the way he looked at her, as though he didn't notice the profound glow on her. In that case, the light on her body, only she could see it, that would be the best. Otherwise, the flickering profound light on her body would easily expose her position. The longer we walk in the forest, the higher the chances of being exposed. Demon Palace saw that the both of them didn't respond, and her tone turned colder. If you don't really want to infiltrate the Palace of Darkness's secret forces to settle the matter, we can go back now. I'll pamper you. You can be delicate. The man's expression was calm. His voice was cold. This sentence made Demon Palace stunned for a moment before she realized that he was replying to her previous sentence, the humiliation towards the young lady. Demon Palace's expression sunk instantly. DMO Xian hugged the young lady again as he walked forward. Demon Palace's expression twisted for a while before she clenched her fists tightly as she followed up angrily and unwillingly. Along the way, nothing was said. DMO Xian couldn't be bothered with Demon Palace, while Demon Palace was infuriated. Yiqing Luo, on the other hand, was researching the profound glow on her body. She was so happy with it that she had no time to tease Demon Palace. They continued walking forward for another hour or so. The surrounding dense forest became more and more lush. The ground was covered with countless vines and weeds. There was no place for one to step on. It looked as though it had been barren for a long time, and no one had stepped on it. After all, it was a place with extreme negative energy. Generally speaking, no one from the Devil Domain would run to the deepest part of Devil Destruction Mountain. Yiqing Luo surveyed the surroundings. He could sense that the aura of death in the surroundings had grown denser. There was not the slightest bit of the vitality of nature, which was lush with leaves and overgrown with weeds. Energy lingered above his head. DMO Xian narrowed his eyes. There's an array in front. After passing through the formation, we will arrive at the secret force of the Gloomy Palace. The demonic palace stopped. However, outside the formation, there is usually a team of death sworn from the Palace of Gloomy Darkness guarding it. She paused for a moment, and the expression on her face became somewhat complicated. Those death warriors are very strange. They're impervious to swords and spears, impervious to fire and water. Most importantly, they can't be killed at all. Yi Qing Luo instantly knew what the Devil Palace was referring to. That was a real death army, an army of corpses. Previously, she had found a way to deal with the undead army. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness no longer used this kind of corpse secret technique. Who would have thought that it would actually appear here? He used the undead army to guard the outer perimeter of the formation. Looks like the Palace of the Gloomy Abyss really valued this secret power. These death warriors are extremely sharp and possess extraordinary strength. The demonic palace didn't know that Yi Qing Luo and the others knew the ability of the death warriors as they continued on. Just in case, let's split up. Yi Qing Luo glanced sideways at the demonic palace as her long and narrow eyes rose slightly, as her lips curled into an ambiguous arc. All right. Chapter 51:31. Seeing Yi Qing Luo's straightforward reply, Devil Palace's brows creased. This young lady had probably been spoiled rotten by her husband and totally didn't know about the current situation. The reason why she said act separately was to intentionally let Yi Qing Luo know that if she was alone, she totally had no ability to protect herself. What she wanted to see was Mu Yu revealing a terrified expression, hugging Chao Yun tightly and acting coquettishly, not willing to separate. But she had not expected the other party to agree readily. Indeed, a young lady who was ignorant of worldly affairs. Devil Palace laughed coldly to herself. She wanted to see if Mu Yu would be the first one to be discovered and caught by the Palace of Darkness after they split up. In case Chao Yun stopped her, Devil Palace rushed to speak first. This palace's suggestion to split up isn't really to split up, but to set off from one and to avoid being discovered by the Death Warriors. Moreover, if we split up, if one of us is discovered by the Death Warriors, the other two can still think of a way to rescue him. As she said that, she looked at DMO Xian. Of course, we can't split up too much. Do you have any objections? Devil Palace's words were obviously asking for DMO Xian's opinion. The man's seemingly obedient and harmless face was calm. His clear blue eyes casually glanced at the Demon Palace, and then moved away without a care in the world. Finally, it fell onto the young lady. His gaze softened in an instant. His dark red lips moved slightly as he replied indifferently, "My wife will make the decision." Devil Palace. Another mouthful of dog food. Yi Qing Luo winked at him as she beamed. What Lord Devil Hall said is very forceful. If the three of us are together, if we're discovered by the Death Warriors, then we'll be wiped out at the same time. If we were to split up, it would reduce the chances of being discovered. She held DMO Xian's hand and said, "I'll be careful. Husband, don't worry." DMO Xian nodded his head slightly, and without giving the Devil's Palace another glance, he walked straight ahead. Yi Qing Luo also skipped towards another direction. By the time Devil Palace reacted, she was the only one left. Devil Palace stared at the direction where Yi Qing Luo left as his fists clenched tightly, as his sinister, beautiful eyes shot out sharply. Next year today would be Mu Yu's death anniversary. Although Yi Qing Luo and DMO Xian were acting separately, in reality, after the two of them left the Demon Hall, they had already quietly met up. What a joke. This was a place that hid the greatest secret of the Dark Palace. How could DMO Xian possibly allow her to act alone? What he said just now was just him purposely ignoring the Demon Hall. As for the Demon Hall, Yi Qing Luo didn't trust him. Who knew if the Devil Hall had intentionally lured the two of them here? Chapter 51:32. It was better to rely on herself. Rather than rely on anyone, she might as well rely on herself. Amen. In her Xian, Yi Qing Luo hugged the Mo Xian's arm as she looked at the array in front. Inside the array, a thin mist pervaded. She could faintly see a few people standing upright in the middle of the array. No, they couldn't be called as people. Just their outer appearance, shrouded in a black robe, standing upright in their designated place, like a scarecrow, not moving at all. Yi Qing Luo knew. That was the dead body army. Once the both of them took half a step closer to the array, those corpses which were like scarecrows would definitely attack them together. Yi Qing Luo pinched Mo Xian's arm. Can you use the blink movement secret art to bypass the array directly? Mo Xian glanced sideways as his slender fingers pinched her delicate nose. This array is a little strange. If you use the blink movement secret art rashly, there's a possibility of falling into the array, and it will still alarm those corpses. His vision looked towards the array. Then he released the hand which was holding the young lady's waist. Let me try. Yi Qing Luo walked behind him with a fangirl look. In fact, she didn't have the time to see clearly what Mo Xian did. She only saw her man took a step forward. After that, the bamboo-colored brocade robe fluttered without any wind, making a fluttering sound. And then, she could only see that bamboo-colored robe as hazy as green smoke, or as though pieces of green bamboo broke out from the ground, growing rapidly. She even smelled a fresh bamboo fragrance. After that, the next moment, her waist was locked by the man, and the man's deep voice floated down from above. All right, next. I'll have to trouble my wife. This was it? What on earth happened earlier? Why did it end before she could appreciate her Xian's heroic bearing? Her forehead was poked by the man's slender fingers. Why are you in a daze? Yi Qing Luo blinked, staring at Mo Xian. Are you doing it on purpose, not wanting me to see how powerful you are? When the man heard that, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. That obedient and harmless face made one feel even more pity for him. Between his azure blue eyes, there seemed to be ripples of water that were slowly spreading. Yi Qing Luo bumped her face against his chest. This man was trying to seduce her again. Oh, she just had to fall for this trick, even if his face was a face that had been disguised. But because it was her, he couldn't resist it no matter what. Yi Qing Luo resigned herself to her fate and wrapped her arms around the man's tight waist. Then he teleported. Two figures instantly leaped into the formation. The formation was still surrounded by a thin mist that gradually swallowed the two figures. No one noticed the moment the girl's figure entered the formation. Around her neck, her fingers, her wrists, and her ears. Suddenly, a faint light shone. It was extremely faint and fleeting. When the blink movement secret art settled down, Yi Qing Luo sensed that something was amiss. She subconsciously wanted to tighten her grip around Nan Rao's arm, but he grabbed nothing. Her expression froze. Xian. In the surroundings, there was no sign of Mo Xian at all. Not only did she not see Mo Xian, the place she was in now was also an illusory darkness. The surrounding was like a solidified, thick black fog. This kind of darkness was different from the darkness in the dark. She could clearly see the thick black fog around her, but there were large patches of darkness, which made her feel like she was imprisoned in the darkness. She couldn't see the road ahead clearly. What was this place? Why were she and Xian separated? Chapter 5133. Lass. Suddenly, a familiar and gentle voice rang in her mind. This voice made Yi Qing Luo surprised. Old Man Song. Old Man Song, who had been cutting off contact, could actually sense her now. Yi Qing Luo raised her wrist and looked at the azure dew bracelet. What's going on? I couldn't contact you during this period of time. Old Man Song's tone was filled with worry. Did something happen? Yi Qing Luo succinctly explained that she couldn't contact him after she reached the Devil Domain. And the reason why she appeared here was explained. Old Man Song muttered to himself for a moment. His tone was solemn. Your situation, there's a possibility. You and the Overlord were involved in a different array. Different array? Yi Qing Luo frowned, but that array, Xian had already dealt with it. Maybe it's an array within an array. Old Man Song couldn't be sure. Of course, the array within the array doesn't mean the array within the array. It's all done by the Palace of Darkness. Yi Qing Luo understood the deeper meaning in his words. what you mean is, this place originally had an array, and the Palace of Darkness had covered it with another array. And the array that Xian resolved just now only resolved the Palace of Darkness array? You can explain it that way. Old Man Song's tone was solemn, an array that even the Overlord didn't detect. It's definitely not simple. Be careful. Which meant she and DMO Xian were involved in another array. And that array separated her and DMO Xian. This array was set up by the Palace of Darkness, or even the Palace of Darkness didn't know about it, or the array set up by the Palace of Darkness on the surface was actually to conceal this array. The more Yiqing Luo thought, the more she felt that things weren't simple. And there was another thing that made her feel strange was, after being involved in this array, she and Old Man Song could actually contact each other. However, the battle pets in the pet space were still as quiet as a dead silence, still unable to sense the existence of the battle pets. So, in this array, only the Azure Dew bracelet regained its connection with her. This place, I've never seen it before. Old Man Song carefully sensed the surrounding atmosphere, and this black fog gives me an extremely evil feeling. Evil? Yiqing Luo was stunned. Are you sure? I'm not sure. Old Man Song sighed softly. The aura here is too strange. This old man has an ominous premonition. He had just finished his sentence. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly thumped. Then, her feet left the ground, and her whole body fell weightlessly. The falling speed was extremely fast. Yiqing Luo could only hear the whistling sound of the wind. She even took the opportunity to look down. Below them, there was a huge whirlpool, and huge waves were swirling around them. Within the vortex, a thick layer of condensed black fog covered it. That solidified feeling, it made Yiqing Luo feel that when she fell into the whirlpool, she would be badly injured. The thick, majestic black mist made the atmosphere and environment even more terrifying and gloomy. Yiqing Luo also felt. The black fog below seemed to have stretched out a pair of long hands, grabbed her feet, and pulled her into the whirlpool. What the F***CK was going on? Following Yiqing Luo's inner howl of rage, her whole body fell into the whirlpool. Chapter 51:34. The stifling pain in her chest made Yiqing Luo feel that it was difficult to breathe. The stifling feeling made her eyelids heavier, and that icy cold big palm that grabbed her feet kept twisting upwards, as if it was imprisoning her tightly. The icy cold touch was like a needle, piercing in her body. It was so painful that she wanted to groan out, but she couldn't make any sound between her breath. Yiqing Luo tried hard to maintain her consciousness, but that cold, bone-piercing, evil, and malicious Qi made her unable to resist at all. Vaguely, she heard Old Man Song's urgent call. She could even feel it. On her body, the jade pendant's profound light shield was constantly contending against that Qi. Yiqing Luo was like being squeezed between two kinds of forces, not knowing how long she had fallen. The strong suction force finally stopped. It was at this moment. A huge force filled her limbs and bones. This surge of power was completely sudden. Yiqing Luo didn't have time to react and suddenly felt pain all over her body. Finally, she couldn't bear it. Her pink lips opened and spat out a painful cry. And it was this cry that came out. She suddenly opened her eyes and sat down weakly on the rain. What entered her eyes was not the thick black from before, but a dazzling white, like a bright light, piercing straight into her eyes. Yiqing Luo raised her hand in pain and blocked the white light, until she adapted to this light. She then slowly stood up from the ground. She was now in a huge. Yiqing Luo wasn't sure what kind of building was in front of her, or it was like an extremely old castle. So old. Even the castle's gate was an oval stone gate. What was this place? Yiqing Luo looked around vigilantly. White light shrouded the floating. There was only this castle in front of her. There was nothing else in all directions. Moreover, the surrounding atmosphere was a little cold and damp. He could feel waves of cold wind sweeping past his bare feet. It seemed like something was touching her feet. Yiqing Luo tentatively took a step forward. The sound of water splashing could be heard from beneath his feet. Startled, she looked down. Only then did he realize that he was standing on a vast expanse of white water. Every step she took, the water rippled and spread out in all directions. She was stunned and somewhat shocked. She wasn't sure if it was just her imagination. Why do I feel like the castle was calling to her, enticing her? It was as if there was an inexplicable attraction that made her want to head towards the castle unconsciously. That castle? What secrets were they hiding? Yiqing Luo pressed her aching brows as she took a look at the castle and looked at the vast expanse of white surroundings, as well as the rippling lake's surface beneath her feet. It seemed that she could only head toward the castle in front, no matter what secrets were hidden in that castle. Or was there any danger? It was better than standing here and waiting for death. He didn't know when the lake would go crazy. If he couldn't stand up, he would drown in the lake. She had to think of a way to leave this illusory array. If she and Xian separated, Xian would definitely be anxious. Yiqing Luo clenched her slender fingers as her narrow eyes fixed on the castle in front for a moment. Finally, she took a step and headed towards the castle. Chapter 5135. Such a huge castle was emitting a desolate and silent atmosphere. Just as she neared the stone door, she could feel a strong malicious intent coming from within. Yiqing Luo's footsteps halted. Lass, something is wrong with this castle. That strong malice was really too chilling. Yiqing Luo pursed her red lips. Her intuition had always been very sharp. Although she could feel the malicious intent, but she inexplicably felt this intent wasn't targeted at her. Instead, it felt an inexplicable attraction was attracting her to step into the castle. This feeling made Yiqing Luo's heart feel uneasy. What exactly was hidden in this castle? Was it the secluded palace's scheme, or something else? Yiqing Luo's thoughts were in a whirl. Finally, her figure flashed as she displayed her teleportation secret technique and entered the castle. The white light flickered, but she didn't see the young lady's figure. After Yiqing Luo entered the castle, she began to study the layout and topography of the castle. Her line of sight wandered around quickly. She originally thought that there must be something hidden in this castle. But after one round, there wasn't a single human presence in this castle. Not a single living thing could be seen. Only the cold qi that came from all directions corroded her breathing. This castle was huge. It was so huge that Yiqing Luo spent an entire hour before she could remember all the topography in her mind. Finally, she stood in the middle of the castle, in the largest and most spacious main hall. The deathly silent atmosphere didn't slow down because of her arrival. On the contrary, the atmosphere was even stronger. Outside of this cold qi, Yiqing Luo hadn't noticed anything strange. No, this castle's malicious intent is too strong, and the qi is not something that can be formed overnight. Old Man Song's tone was solemn and vigilant. Lass, don't let your guard down. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she replied. I know. Her words had just ended. Her vision fell onto her wrist. Earlier, she didn't seem to be hallucinating. The moment Old Man Song opened his mouth to remind her, the azure dew bracelet inexplicably burned her hand, although it was very slight, but she still felt it. Old Man Song, do you feel it? Yiqing Luo clenched her fist tightly as she stared at the azure dew bracelet. Old Man Song was confused. Feel what? As soon as he opened his mouth, the azure dew bracelet burned again. However, Old Man Song clearly did not notice. Yiqing Luo's fingertips rested on the azure dew bracelet. Her long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. The azure dew bracelet to this place, there was a reaction. Yiqing Luo told this discovery to Old Man Song. Old Man Song was somewhat surprised. As the guardian spirit of the azure dew bracelet, he didn't feel the slightest bit of strangeness. Yiqing Luo muttered to herself for a moment, Why don't you come out in your spiritual form, perhaps your spiritual form? We'll be able to sense this castle. This castle that appeared out of nowhere. It was impossible for it to be like what it seemed on the surface. There were no creatures at all. There must be something hidden behind this castle. I'll give it a try. Following Old Man Song's words, a wisp of white smoke lingered above Yi Qing Luo's head. The white-bearded, white-browed, white-robed old man circled around her twice in a transparent manner. Old Man Song was about to speak. Suddenly, his expression froze. That white smoke-like spiritual form fiercely flew towards the center of the main hall, towards a black iron mirror hanging on the wall. Old Man Song. Yi Qing Luo immediately flew up and stretched out her hand to pull Old Man Song. Her finger passed through Old Man Song's body, and Old Man Song absorbed the black mirror at an extremely fast speed. Chapter 51:36. Yi Qing Luo didn't have time to think and pounced towards the direction where Old Man Song disappeared. The moment she was sucked into the black mirror, on Yi Qing Luo's body, all the vast Aqua Divine armaments were emitting a dazzling glow. The light from the Azure Dew artifacts formed a line of intertwining light that enveloped Yi Qing Luo. Then, all the light rushed towards the Azure Dew bracelet on Yi Qing Luo's wrist. Yi Qing Luo suddenly felt her chest was heavy, as if there were countless forces squeezing her internal organs. At the same time, she could sense a strong sense of malice. It was getting closer and more obvious. Yi Qing Luo's gaze followed Old Man Song's spiritual body closely, her fingers pressed on the Azure Dew bracelet, desperately calling Old Man Song back. But the moment she entered the black mirror, Yi Qing Luo was stunned. What entered her eyes was still the main hall of the ancient castle. The exact same main hall. Even the furnishings and decorations were exactly the same. The only difference was in the center of the main hall, a dense black light gathered. That black light was extremely dazzling. Old Man Song was currently suspended above the black light, unable to move. However, there was only doubt on Old Man Song's face, no expression of pain. Old Man Song, are you all right? Yi Qing Luo worriedly asked. I'm fine, just can't move. Old Man Song tried to move his spiritual body, but his limbs seemed to be pressed by something heavy, making him only float in the air. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips. Her gaze fell on the black light wrapped around Old Man Song's limbs. She could clearly see, in that ball of black light which was below Old Man Song, a figure was faintly discernible. The black light was too dazzling, but it couldn't escape the density. She could barely see clearly that the figure was bent over, head hung low, as if powerless in the black light. Who was this person? Yi Qing Luo congealed her eyes and looked over seriously. At the same time, the black light rippled, revealing that figure. That was a man. A man dressed in a black robe had his head lowered, hanging there powerlessly. His messy long hair covered his face. What attracted Yi Qing Luo's attention was, the man's limbs were bound by huge iron chains. The ends of the chains bound the man's limbs. On the other side, there was a black light hidden in the void. Yi Qing Luo could even see that in that black glow in the void, numerous iron chains were intertwined, as though they were trying to bind the man completely within. Yi Qing Luo stared at that man in a daze, as she was still in a daze. The secret hidden in this ancient castle was probably the man in the black iron mirror, because she could clearly feel it, the strong malice she had sensed all this time. It was coming from the man's body, although the man seemed to be unconscious. However, the killing intent and malice on his body could not be concealed. Furthermore, why would this man attract Old Man Song's spiritual body? Last look, vast water, divine artifact. Old Man Song's shocked voice called Yi Qing Luo back from her contemplation. She composed herself, raised her hand, and lowered her eyes to look at the azure water's silk chain on her wrist. He could see the azure water ring and the azure water chain intertwining with each other, as well as the other azure water's divine artifact's power, all surged towards the Azure Waters bracelet. What's going on? Yiqing Luo looked at the Azure Waters bracelet that was being irrigated by the divine artifact's power and was somewhat stunned. This was the first time she had seen such a situation. Azure Waters divine artifact seems to be related to this array. Old Man Song said, "Trash, seventh young mistress. Lord Di Zun, please be gentler with your love." Trash, seventh young mistress. Lord Di Zun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 51:37. And the connection was huge. This was the first time the Azure Aqua Divine Relic had such a big reaction. So, Old Man Song would be imprisoned in this black glow. Was it also because of this reason? Wait, Yiqing Luo was startled. Array. Yes, this is an array. Old Man Song's expression was very solemn, half squinting his eyes, dangerous and deep. The person below, those iron chains wrapped around his body, forming a pattern. It is a complicated array. Old Man Song paused. His tone became even heavier. Moreover, it is an extremely ancient array, so ancient that at least during the era of the Divine Emperor, it could only be set up. This array is sealing this man. Is it a seal? Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Her charming eyes fixated on the man in the black glow. There was a strange feeling in her heart. Why, that man seemed to be beckoning her to walk over. Obviously, his whole body was emitting a thick, malicious intent. But Yiqing Luo still felt that kind of malicious intent couldn't affect her at all. He didn't want to hurt her. Yiqing Luo's pale little hand pressed on her heart. Her slender brows knitted even tighter, wrinkling into a ball. Why would she have this kind of feeling? Was it that man who was sealed? Up to mischief? Yiqing Luo suppressed the impulse in her heart. Then, bit by bit, she approached the man a few steps. Closer and closer. On her wrist, that blossoming cherry blossom azure aqua bracelet, flashing with the power of the divine weapon, became stronger and stronger. Whoosh! A ball of profound light, like a raging flame, suddenly gushed out, instantly spreading over the entire castle's main hall. In a split second, the main hall was shrouded in a layer of strong red light. At the same time, the strong red light easily dispersed the thick black glow around the man's body. Under the red light, like a raging fire, in the black light, revealed the man's hanging figure. She could also clearly see, under the cover of that messy long hair, half of his side profile. Yiqing Luo didn't know how she should describe the feeling after seeing the man clearly. From the man's body, Yiqing Luo only felt a kind of bone-piercing cold aura and also carried a thick malicious intent, pouncing on her. Just like this man carried too much blood and slaughter on his back. Only then could it create such a deep and dense in-chi. Yiqing Luo could only see the man's side profile. However, one could tell that the man was very handsome. However, under the crisscrossing of the red and black lights, his skin seemed a little cold and pale. Who was this man? Why would it be sealed here by a formation? Yiqing Luo also asked this question. Old Man Song moved his head with some difficulty and looked down. I don't know either. I've never seen this kind of black light before, and the aura emanating from the man's body. It was also very unfamiliar. Yiqing Luo glanced at her wrist. Her slender fingers lightly touched the azure dew bracelet. The petals were like blooming cherry blossoms, contrasting perfectly with the girl's fair skin. She pursed her lips and said, I have a guess. Old Man Song, azure dew bracelet. Can it undo this formation? Yiqing Luo hesitated for a moment, but still said it out. Old Man Song was silent for a moment. The azure dew artifact's reaction is indeed very strong. Even I have no way to control my spiritual body to return to the azure dew bracelet. It's very possible that this formation is attracting the azure dew artifact's power. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51:38. So, this ancient castle had been sending her a summoning signal. It was hope. Could she use the Azure Dew artifact to undo his seal? That meant this man could possibly have consciousness. With this thought, Yiqing Luo's gaze towards the man became a bit more probing. She took another step towards the man and opened her mouth. Can hear me, right? The man in the crisscrossing black and red light didn't move at all. He is sealed here by the array, so he should have no consciousness and can't hear. Old man Tsung opened his mouth to explain. The words just left his mouth. An extremely intense, malicious intent, carrying an irresistible oppressive force, directly struck towards Yiqing Luo. Within the malicious intent, killing intent burst forth. But Yiqing Luo didn't feel vigilant against that killing intent, or a feeling that made her whole body tremble. That was the man's aura. He indeed had consciousness. Old man Song obviously felt this feeling. His illusory body, under this kind of harsh aura, actually began to sway like it was being blown away by the wind. A pained expression appeared on his face. Yiqing Luo's expression tightened as she urgently opened her mouth. If you can hear me, first let go of old man Song's spirit body. That aura didn't move. On the contrary, old man Song's body became increasingly illusory. Don't you want me to help? This is your attitude when you want me to help? Yiqing Luo clenched her fists tightly as she nervously looked at old man Song and then looked towards a man. Let go of old man Song and let him return to the Azure Dew bracelet. The young girl's voice was already tainted with some anger. That malicious, harsh aura, after pausing for a moment, it slowly retracted back. Then, old man Song's figure fell down from midair. Old man Song. Yiqing Luo quickly raised her hand and let old man Song return to the Azure Dew bracelet. Almost at the moment when the black light released old man Song. Old man Song's figure returned to the Azure Dew bracelet. His voice was a bit weak. I'm fine. I'll be fine after resting in the bracelet. This man needs my help and temporarily won't do anything to me. Moreover, he's sealed, so he shouldn't be able to do anything to me. Yiqing Luo comforted. You rest first, I'll probe his background. Judging from the commotion just now, the man was obviously conscious, and he could hear Yiqing Luo's words. She stared vigilantly at the man and the giant chains wrapped around his body. She spoke again. Your formation needs the vast water divine artifact to undo it, right? I have the vast water divine artifact, and only I alone can activate its power. Following her words, the malice surrounding her seemed to want to swallow her whole. However, he was also trying his best to suppress his killing intent. Yiqing Luo's expression remained unchanged as she continued. If you want me to help you, I can. However, as a condition for helping you, you should also show your sincerity. The malicious intent was even more ferocious than before. Yiqing Luo could even hear the sound of howling wind in her ears. It was as if a person was roaring angrily beside her ear. This man didn't seem to have a good temper. I need to communicate with you. What can I do? She couldn't always feel his malicious intent and guess the meaning he was expressing. She hadn't lit up that kind of skill. This kind of communication was totally unworkable. After Yiqing Luo's voice fell, the malicious intent surrounding her subsided, as if it was silent. Trash, 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash, 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51:39. About the time it took to burn half a stick of incense. Yiqing Luo felt there was an extremely strong attraction in front of her, constantly attracting her, calling her to come closer. The man was calling her. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips, her eyes cold and stern, secretly guessing the man's intentions. She suppressed the attraction surging in her chest. While looking down, she concentrated on the Azure Dew bracelet on her wrist. The power of the divine artifact was dazzling, the red flames burning like a raging fire. Yiqing Luo's brain quivered. You mean, You want me to use the Azure Dew bracelet to get close to you? Strong malice floated and lingered, as if responding to Yi Qing Luo's question. Yi Qing Luo stood in the same place without moving. Her fingertips lightly stroked the Azure Dew bracelet, her pink lips slightly raised. How can I believe you? Intense malice surged forth once again, as if it was about to erupt in anger. Yi Qing Luo still smiled, but the smile did not reach the bottom of her eyes. The Azure Dew artifact is the key to unlocking this formation. You want me to use the Azure Dew bracelet to get close to you? What if I unravel your formation and you want to kill me? Who am I going to cry to? She very rationally analyzed. So, from my point of view, I can't let myself be in extreme danger and unable to save myself. Now you're the one asking for my help. Your attitude better be a little more respectful. The surging malice was thick and deep. It made Yi Qing Luo feel like her breathing was being choked. But the next moment, that surging malice dispersed. Like a compromise, Yi Qing Luo's taut heartstrings relaxed. Sure enough, she guessed correctly. The other party right now urgently needed someone to help him unravel the formation. And she was the suitable candidate. The man was anxious to unravel the formation and regain his freedom. He absolutely would not easily anger her. Otherwise, the man would not need to go through so many ways to summon her here. Yi Qing Luo glanced at the Azure Dew bracelet, then slowly stepped into the intersecting black and red lights, which was beside the man. She was very careful not to touch the huge iron chains that bound the man, and this formation did not have any intention of stopping her from approaching. Just like that, very easily, simply stood beside the man. At close range, Yi Qing Luo could clearly see the man's appearance. Only then did she see clearly. On the man's head, there were two inconspicuous protrusions. Yi Qing Luo stared at it carefully and stretched out her hand to touch it. It was a little hard, and its shape looked like something like a horn. However, he couldn't tell what kind of horn it was. This man was not human. Yi Qing Luo was rather astonished as she stared at the man from head to toe. When she pinched the horn on the man's head, the malice of the tyrannical aura that she had been suppressing once again surged up. Yi Qing Luo retracted her hand. If you don't allow me to touch, then so be it. Why are you so fierce? I'm just curious about what's growing on your head. The tyrannical malice surrounded her body, giving her a kind of gloomy pressure before slowly dispersing. Yi Qing Luo raised her fair hand. His slender, jade-like fingers, under the crisscrossing red and black light, looked like translucent jade. She moved slightly. The power of the vast water divine artifact slowly seeped into the man's body through her fingertips. Dong! The sound of metal colliding rang out. Bang! The huge chains hit the ground, making a dull sound. Boom! The iron chains swayed incessantly, as if venting some kind of emotion. Trash, 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash, 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5140. In the surrounding void of black light, those crisscrossing iron chains began to collide violently. The hurricane swept and the Inchi spread. The strong, malicious intent was like a bloody mouth opened wide, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it let out a clamorous roar. Yi Qing Luo was shaken so much that she took a step back, raising her eyes to look at the man with vigilance. She should be glad that this castle seemed to be frozen. Other than the surrounding black light that would float, there was nothing else. So when the hurricane swept, she was only filled with Inchi and malicious cold wind, directly blowing toward her face. It wasn't like those kinds of big moves after the formation was activated, like flying sand and gravel all over the sky, or whatever tornado sweeping. After Yi Qing Luo stabilized herself, her long and narrow eyes narrowed dangerously. After that, her fingertips moved. A raging flame feather fan appeared from the palm of her hand. Her nimble fingers moved slightly. The raging flame red light instantly gathered towards the glower flame fan. Even the power of the divine weapon that had seeped into the man's body also turned back at an extremely fast speed. Clatter, clatter. The huge iron chain swayed crazily, as if in the next moment it would split open. Even in the void of black light, the complex, intertwining iron chain swayed incessantly, as if it was angry about something. Yi-Ching Luo's red lips curled up in a mocking and sarcastic manner. Her charming eyes looked at the man with some traces of ridicule. This man, indeed, was trying to trick her. Luckily, she kept an eye on him, knew that he needed to rely on the vast water divine weapon's power to be able to break the seal. So in the beginning, she only injected a little vast water divine weapon's power to test him. As expected, he actually wanted to take the opportunity to directly devour her. Heh, did he really think she was stupid? Looks like you don't need my help. Yi-Ching Luo's voice was icy cold, with a hint of sarcasm. And as Yi-Ching Luo drew out the last trace of the divine weapon's power, that violently swaying iron chain finally stopped. Following that, there was a strong malicious intent surrounding her. Like a threat, like a warning. Yi-Ching Luo was expressionless and unmoved. She took 2 steps back until she was out of the range of the chains. Only then did she casually sit down cross-legged. I haven't even undone the seal, and you already want to take my life. If I help you undo the seal, do you think I can still live? She sneered, I don't trust you now, so the deal we made before is invalid. That intense, malicious intent surged even more violently. The entire ball of dense black light wrapped around her body. However, before he could get close, the Azure Dew bracelet would gush out a fiery red light, directly blocking off the malicious corrosion. Yi-Ching Luo's lips curled upwards as she looked at the man with a gaze filled with ridicule. Still trying to act? I don't mind, staying here to see how long you can keep up the act. She leisurely looked down at the glowing flame fan in her fingertips. Her slender and fair fingers held onto the glowing flame fan as she casually tapped it. She was completely unresponsive to the man's malice and the chilling aura, until after the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Crash! The sound of the huge iron chain hitting the ground. A violent hurricane swept through the entire castle's main hall. First, it was a very slight sound. Following that, it began to violently collide. Compared to earlier, when Yi-Ching Luo poured the divine weapon's power into the man, the sound was even louder. When did you find out? A bone-chilling voice, as if it came from hell, resounded through the main hall. Yi-Ching Luo listened to this voice and felt her hair stand on end. 7th Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. 7th Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5141. She slowly raised her eyes. Her long and narrow eyes were filled with some mischievousness as she looked at the man who was restrained by the iron chain. Their eyes met. Yi-Ching Luo had a moment of astonishment. That was a pair of deep and cold, as if hiding the world's endless killing and sin. Eyes. Black, extremely black. Evil, extremely evil. Evil, extremely evil. Just the 4 eyes met. Yi-Ching Luo felt that her body and mind, even her soul, seemed to have a cold current spreading to her limbs and bones. It made her feel a kind of unbearable pressure. That man. The man who was restrained by the iron chain. Yi-Ching Luo also clearly saw that face hidden under the messy long hair. It was completely different from what she imagined. That could no longer be called a human face. The man's face, which was the side of his face that she saw at the beginning, was indeed handsome, sword-like brows raised, eyes full of malice, revealing the coldness of killing and sin. But, on the other side, made one's hair stand. That side of the face was covered with black scales, one after another, densely covering half of the face. The color of his lips was not the red of a human, but a kind of purplish black, as if it was poisoned. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows frowned slightly. No wonder you're the new owner of the vast water divine weapon. The man's cold voice rang. That pair of malicious eyes sized up Yi Qing Luo. After seeing this lord's face, you can still maintain your composure. But you're really ugly and quite scary. Yi Qing Luo objectively evaluated. The man laughed loudly, laughing so much that Yi Qing Luo felt like the mountains were collapsing, especially when he laughed, that half of the face full of black scales twisted together, looking even more terrifying. You're the descendant of that woman, Fengge? After the man finished laughing, he stared at Yi Qing Luo, sizing her up. It's been thousands of years. I don't know how many generations have passed, but you still look like that woman. This man really knew Fengge. That also meant this man, at least thousands of years ago, when her mother was still alive. Old monster, Yi Qing Luo. She's my mother. The man's eyes, which were filled with malice, were momentarily stunned. Then he stared at Yi Qing Luo, sizing her up from head to toe. Are you lying to me? I've read countless women. How could I not see that you're just a 15 or 16-year-old girl? Moreover, if you were that woman's daughter, would you be so weak? Yi Qing Luo. It's up to you to believe or not. It was one thing to suspect that she wasn't her mother's daughter, but there was no need to attack her personally, right? The man stared at Yi Qing Luo for quite some time. Even the chains on his 4 limbs kept shaking. Finally, they were able to ascertain Yi Qing Luo's age. Thinking that Yi Qing Luo was lying to him, he asked his doubts again. How did you know that I am actually conscious? Furthermore, it was so timely that it prevented me from devouring it. I guessed it. Yi Qing Luo replied carelessly. The man frowned slightly, and the black scales on his palm gathered together again. You guessed it. At that time, she had made a solemn vow, confident that she would be able to drag it out with him. It was actually guessed it. Yi Qing Luo nodded. Just a casual guess. If you have really regained your consciousness, and I'm staring at you, after a long time, you won't be able to maintain a single movement. I didn't expect you to be so impatient. Then what if I actually haven't regained my consciousness? The man felt stuffy. 7th Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. 7th Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5142. Yi Qing Luo casually lifted her eyelids. If you don't, then so be it. It's just a waste of time. This seat can spend another 10,000 years here. You, a human, without any food here, can you outlast this seat? The malevolence in the man's eyes intensified. Yi Qing Luo sneered at him. I'm not stupid. I'll wait for a while. If you really don't regain consciousness, I'll leave. Do you think, after entering here, you can still get out? The man sneered. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. If I don't try, how would I know? She indifferently leaned back and lazily lifted her eyelids. What's more, I made the right bet, haven't I? The man's dark and gloomy face, that half of his face with black scales, seemed to have waves of scales floating. You're smart. You flatter me, Yi Qing Luo bluntly admitted. The man's treacherous, murderous eyes began to scrutinize Yi Qing Luo bit by bit. Finally, it landed on her wrist. That azure dew bracelet with cherry blossoms, dazzling red light, like a burning fire. He said, what do you want to help this seat to undo this array? Yi Qing Luo tilted her head, opened a pair of innocent and harmless eyes, and replied seriously, earlier, if I wasn't smart, I'm afraid my azure dew artifact would have been swallowed by you. A person who wants my life, why should I save him? She blinked her eyes, which were as bright as the stars in the sky, and there was a harmless light circulating in them. She smiled. If it were you, would you be willing? A strong, murderous aura suddenly rose from the man's body. That horrifying face also twisted into a horrifying expression. His poisoned, purplish-black lips curled up sinisterly and said word by word coldly, Feng family's descendant, you have no choice. You can only leave this place if you undo this hall's array. Otherwise, you will be trapped here with this seat. The man's malicious intent and the dense, evil aura didn't affect the young lady in the slightest. The girl's eyes were calm. Her bright red lips curled up in a very casual manner. Oh, it doesn't matter. I'll die if I save you, and I'll die if I don't. I might as well not save you. At least, if I die, you'll still be sealed. The man, this young girl, was simply a marvel. It was one thing for him to not be afraid of the evil aura he was emitting. His words could choke someone to death. Clearly, his attempt to forcefully devour the young girl's power had completely angered her. In the depths of the man's eyes, a whirlpool surged, and then it stopped. The sound of the huge chains around him also became slightly softer. He patiently said, "Then, what do you want? This is how you should ask for help." The girl nodded in satisfaction. Her bright red lips curled into a gratified smile. "At the very least, you should show me your sincerity. You came here for the divine emperor's tomb, right?" The man was stating a fact, not a question. The smile on Yi-Ching Luo's face instantly froze. The divine emperor's tomb? What did the divine emperor's tomb and this array have to do with him? The man was keenly aware that the expression on the young girl's face was not right. He sneered. That woman's descendant came here not to enter her tomb. Waste 7th miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Waste 7th miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5143. She's truly a failure. Even her descendants didn't think of paying their respects to her. What did you say? Yi-Ching Luo interrupted the man's sneer as she stared into his eyes and asked word by word. This is the divine emperor's tomb? The man's eyes, filled with malice, suddenly curved sinisterly. Did I say that again? Yi-Ching Luo's heart pounded wildly. Her fair and delicate fingers were tightly clenched. His palms were covered in cold sweat. She forcefully swallowed a mouthful of saliva and forcefully suppressed the excitement in her chest. Her purpose in coming to the infernal domain was for the divine emperor's tomb, to find her mother's tomb chamber. Following the mysterious flames W diagram all the way, he only found the demon domain. The next clue was the demon dragon's lair. This was because they could not find any information about the demon dragon in the demon domain. There was no progress in searching for the divine emperor's tomb, but unexpectedly it was an accident. She had news about the tomb of the divine emperor. Yi-Ching Luo's long and narrow eyes were fixated on the man who was restrained by the iron chains. Is this the demon dragon's lair? When he heard Yi-Ching Luo's question, that sinister-looking man who was waiting for Yi-Ching Luo to ask congealed his expression. His eyes were filled with bloodlust and viciousness, and they were filled with killing intent. Mystic Dragon. It's been a long time since I've heard this title, he said. His voice was dark, hoarse, and somewhat piercing. The guess in Yi-Ching Luo's heart was verified after the man said this sentence. She looked at the man and suddenly smiled. So you are the Mystic Dragon. No wonder this man's body was filled with endless murderous intent. Anyone who got close to him would be corroded by the energy around him. No wonder half of this man's face was covered in scales. Those were dragon scales, the so-called demon dragon's lair. He was referring to the place where the Mystic Dragon King, the man in front of him, was sealed. This was an ancient castle. That's right, I am the one who caused people to tremble in fear 10,000 years ago, the one who stood above the realms, the Devil Dragon King, Long Outyin. The man raised his eyebrows, his gaze deep and cold. His eyes were filled with malice, arrogant and flamboyant. But when he heard that name, Yi-Ching Luo almost choked. What? Was she hallucinating? Did she hear it wrong? What was the name of this demon dragon king? Long Outyin. So explosive, so Mary Sue, so casual. Yi-Ching Luo was flustered in the wind. To be honest, the name Long Outyin and his identity as the demonic dragon king were a perfect match. It was just as cool and arrogant. But She really had no choice but to look directly at this name. This name almost made her heart, which had been excited about finding the demonic dragon's lair, calm down. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's constipated expression, the man, Long Ao Tian, stared at her maliciously. "Have you heard of my name?" Yi Qing Luo. She had heard it countless of times, all kinds of versions of Long Ao Yin. She adjusted the expression on her face, curled her lips, and very seriously praised. "The name is very nice. It suits your temperament." "Of course," Long Ao Yin sneered. "Back then, I was invincible in every realm. Then why are you sealed here now?" Yi Qing Luo listened to his boasting expressionlessly. Long Ao Yin, "That is because I lost the bet with that woman, so I willingly stayed here." "Since you are willing, what else do you need me to help you with?" Yi Qing Luo continued to be expressionless. She was either expressionless or unable to hold back her laughter. Waste 7th Miss. "Overlord, please be gentle." Waste 7th Miss. "Overlord, please be gentle." 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5144. As though Yi Qing Luo had poked his sore spot, Long Ao Yin's entire body rolled up a gust of chilly in-chi, rushing towards Yi Qing Luo's face. That sinister, malicious, and terrifying face was also filled with anger. His malicious eyes stared at her fiercely. Yi Qing Luo continued to stab him expressionlessly. "Why do I feel that you can't beat my mother? So you were sealed in this formation." Long Ao Yin heard the way Yi Qing Luo addressed Feng Ge. His gaze was strange. "That woman is really your mother? Could it be your mother?" Yi Qing Luo asked expressionlessly. Long Ao Yin retorted, "How can you say that? How could that woman be my mother?" Yi Qing Luo. Mother. It felt like he was scolding someone. She felt that ever since she knew the name of this demon dragon king, the entire scene had changed. Previously, she thought that this man was filled with murderous and malevolent in-chi, and he would fly into a rage at any disagreement, was an extremely cold, strong man. But when he opened his mouth, Yi Qing Luo felt that he was an idiot, and the kind of idiot with a childish temperament. Anyway, from his conversation with her, Yi Qing Luo totally couldn't sense that this was a devil dragon king who killed without batting an eyelid and was filled with killing and blood stench. "My mother sealed you here because..." She paused slightly, and her tone was hesitant. "To guard the entrance to the Divine Emperor's tomb." The profound flame Tianshu diagram indicated that the entrance to the Divine Emperor's tomb was in the demon dragon's lair, which was the place where Long Ao Yin was sealed. In addition to what Long Ao Yin said, he was sealed here because of a bet with Feng Ge. Yi Qing Luo had a very bold guess. This Long Ao Yin was the demon dragon king. In fact, he was the guardian of the Divine Emperor's tomb entrance. Previously, when she and Dmo Xian broke the array to enter the Nether Palace's secret force, they had neglected the fact that under the Nether Palace's array was the array which had sucked her in. It was probably the formation that her mother had set up that year, and the reason why she was sucked into the formation, but Dmo Xian didn't come over. Probably because she was Feng Ji's daughter. Feng Ji's blood flowed in her. Most importantly, she had the vast water divine relic. This was the key to unlocking Long Ao Yin's formation. Thinking about it this way, all his previous doubts have been resolved. Guard the tomb of the Divine Emperor? I'm a high and mighty demonic dragon. How could I guard that woman's tomb? Long Ao Yin spat on the ground. If that woman hadn't tricked me and caused me to lose the bet, I wouldn't have been sealed here. He was fuming with anger as he stared at Yi Qing Luo. "Since you're that woman's daughter, then release the seal for me. This seat is already sick of staying in this damn place." Yi Qing Luo beamed as she stated her conditions. "I want to enter the Divine Emperor's tomb." "Go in if you want. What do you want to talk to me about?" Long Ao Yin's eyes were filled with malice, and there was a cold glint in them. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head as she put on a serious look. "But I don't know how to go in." "How would I know? Long Outyin replied snappily. Yi Qing Luo spread out her hands with a helpless look. Then there's no other way. Since you're unable to fulfill my request, then there's nothing for us to discuss. Saying that, she brushed her peach red dress and stood up slowly. The peach red dress was like peach blossom petals, which accentuated the young lady's outstanding figure. Long Outyin stared straight at her as his voice lowered. You're really that woman's daughter. You look so alike. Chapter 5145. Yiqing Luo met Long Outyin's gaze, ignoring the malicious intent in his eyes. Do you really think that if I don't undo your seal, I won't be able to get out of here? The young lady's tone was soft, with a hint of careless provocation. Long Outyin, absent-minded for a moment, suddenly regained his senses. He frowned. You can get out? Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly. Her slender fingers brushed past the azure dew bracelet on her wrist. Since this is the seal set by my mother, and the method to break the array requires my azure dew artifact, then, with the azure dew artifact, it shouldn't be difficult for me to leave this place, right? Her lips curled as she smiled casually. I should thank you for helping me find my mother's tomb. The vicious aura around Long Outyin once again surged violently. The killing intent and blood on him seemed to cover the entire main hall of the castle. How dare you? The icy cold words seemed to seep into a large area of cold in-chi on Yiqing Luo's body. Yiqing Luo frowned, raised her hand, and the glower flame fan spread out. The blazing red light lingered around her, shrouding her, dispersing the in-chi released by Long Outyin. Are you threatening me? Yiqing Luo crossed her arms, looked at him calmly, and kindly reminded him, Long Outyin, now you need my help. Long Outyin was enraged. His eyes were filled with evil intent, and they were filled with a chilly rage. He clenched his fists. Half of his face, which was covered in scales, twisted and moved, as if the scales were floating. It made people who saw it had a shocking déjà vu. You and that woman are really alike, the same, despicable and shameless. He was practically gritting his teeth as he spoke. Yiqing Luo accepted this compliment with a smile. I'm just standing on my side. What I did was to ensure my own safety. She paused as her tone became sarcastic. After all, you are someone who wants to devour me. How could I possibly be at ease with you? No matter what the reason was for Long Outyin's action earlier, there was no way to explain, no way to clear his name. It was true that he wanted to kill her heart. How could she have created such a huge problem for herself? You can enter the Divine Emperor's tomb. Long Outyin finally relented. But he hadn't even spoken his conditions. The young girl's lips curled up, and her pink lips parted slightly as she interrupted him. I'll enter the Divine Sovereign's tomb first, and then I'll consider undoing your seal. Otherwise, there's no need for that. How could she not know what Long Outyin wanted to say? Didn't he just want her to break the seal first before he brought her into the Divine Emperor's tomb? She was not a fool. Who would believe him? He's a rotten old man, very bad. How do I know that you won't lie to me? Long Outyin refused without hesitation. Yiqing Luo smiled confidently with a hint of provocation, but Devil Dragon King, you don't have any leeway to choose. She lifted a strand of hair that was draped over her shoulder and twined it around her slender fingertips. You're the one who's at a disadvantage right now, so I'm the one in control. You can only choose to trust me. Either you trust me, or we part ways here. She didn't sound too enthusiastic, as though she wasn't very interested in Long Outyin's reply. That indifferent attitude, it made Long Outyin so angry that his entire face turned black. He gritted his teeth as he stared angrily at Yiqing Luo. You lass, you really don't want to be at a disadvantage. The price of being at a disadvantage is my life. Yiqing Luo smiled calmly. Chapter 5146. Long Outyin's eyes were filled with malice, and his gaze was cold and ruthless. He hadn't even calmed down completely from the rage brought by the young girl. What she said next made Long Outyen's face darken even more. You destroyed the trust with your own hands. You no longer have the right to negotiate. Long Outyen's evil and murderous aura intertwined in the air. Finally, it was time for peace. His purplish-red lips spat out a single word, "All right." It was indeed as what Yi-Ching Luo said. He had no choice. Yi-Ching Luo curled her lips in satisfaction. "You won't regret this decision of yours." Long Outyen gritted his teeth. I hope so. This was probably the second time in Long Outyen's life that he had been humiliated. Moreover, it was the kind that could not resist at all. The first time was Fengge. The second time was Yi-Ching Luo. Looking at Long Ao Tian's stare, Yi-Ching Luo could roughly guess his inner thoughts. She raised her hand and touched her face with her slender fingers. She asked the question that had been bothering her for a long time. "You seem to be able to tell that I'm in disguise?" Ever since Long Outyen had mentioned that she resembled Fengge, she had been wondering about it. She was in disguise now. Although Ji Wuhua's disguise was the same as using the same facial features to create a different face, Ji Wuhua's facial features were the same. However, there was still a huge gap between him and Fengge. However, Long Outyen could tell that she resembled Fengge at first glance. This meant that Long Outyen had seen her as the real her. Long Outyen rolled his eyes. How could I not see through such a low-level disguise technique? When I look at people, I look at their souls. Yi-Ching Luo, you're amazing. Long Outyen snorted coldly. Hand it over. I'll send you to the Emperor God's tomb right now. Things? What the hell? Yi-Ching Luo expressed her stupefaction. Long Outyen furrowed his brows. Dark mirror. Take out the dark mirror. Nether mirror? Yi-Ching Luo thought for some time before she reacted. It was the nether mirror she had taken from Netherworld, a subordinate of the Palace of Dark Shadow in the 21st world. Yi-Ching Luo took out the Ming mirror. In the next instant, the thick black mist sucked the nether mirror over. The nether mirror floated above Long Outyen's head. Endless black energy washed over the nether mirror. Done. The chains binding Long Outyen's body rattled. I've opened the entrance to the God Emperor's tomb. Release my seal now. Yi-Ching Luo stared at that suspended mirror. In the nether mirror, Qi surged. One could vaguely see a floating figure in the nether mirror. On the floating island. He looked very familiar. She had once, when the Palace of Gloom tried to find the Divine Emperor's tomb through her, she had hidden her consciousness outside the chamber of the Divine Emperor's tomb. The floating island she saw was exactly the same. It was the floating island that contained the Divine Sovereign's tomb. This meant that Long Outyen was not lying. She squinted her eyes and looked at Long Outyen. Why are you the guardian of the Divine Emperor's tomb, since his mother asked him to guard the Divine Emperor's tomb? Was it because of trust? Or was it because the murderous aura on him was enough to suppress the power of the Divine Emperor's tomb? This was to prevent the existence of the Divine Emperor's tomb from being leaked out. However, no matter what it was, she didn't intend to release Long Outyen's array just like that. Yi-Ching Luo's long and narrow eyes squinted slightly. Following that, her feet moved. The secret art of blink movement was exhibited. She had already passed through the energy released by Long Outyen and leapt into the nether mirror. Chapter 51:47. Behind her, Long Outyen bellowed in exasperation. You wicked woman! Finally, Yi-Ching Luo could no longer hear Long Outyen's howls. After entering the mirror, her body fell down weightlessly. Finally, she landed on a floating island. She stabilized herself and surveyed the surroundings. Indeed, it was that familiar majestic tomb. But as compared to before, when she entered the consciousness tomb through the murals on the stone wall, now she could clearly feel that her feet were stepping on this greenish-black stone slab. The grave's Qi lingered around her, swallowing her with its fangs and claws. The treacherous red mist that filled the sky was also clear and close. Her senses were extremely deep, and it covered her eyes. It gave her a creepy feeling. This tomb was exactly the same as in her memory. Her heart suddenly pounded wildly, as though something was about to overflow from her chest. That feeling, she didn't know how to describe it. It was like she could sense that in the tomb, there was a feeling that made her extremely excited, and her eyes were turning sour. She knew that came from the connection between her and her mother. This was her and the mother whom she had no memories of for the first time. Such a close distance connection. Excited and apprehensive. Excited and reserved. Yiqing Luo nervously clenched her slender fingers as she took a deep breath. Following that, step by step, she walked towards the tomb's stone door. Regarding the tomb's layout, Yi Zichen was stunned. She was already familiar with it. When she reached the stone door, Yiqing Luo raised her head as she looked at the stone door. That was an extremely obvious, carved human-shaped totem. It wasn't like the indistinct silhouette in her memory. Instead, it was reflected in her eyes extremely clearly. The silhouette was obvious, lifelike. She seemed to be able to see it. That holy and elegant lady dressed in a fiery red dress was standing right in front of her. Their eyes were facing each other. The kind of gentleness and elegance made her heart race uncontrollably. She stared at that clear face in a daze as her fingertips touched that cold stone door. Her pink lips moved slightly as her hoarse voice spat out a word, "Mother." Just one word, choked with sobs. The moment she finished speaking, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. The cold stone door suddenly glowed with an extremely intense red light. That red light was extremely dazzling. Yiqing Luo regained her senses and looked at the stone door, which was emitting red rays in astonishment. It was rather adorable. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and put the Azure Water Divine weapon up." Old man Tsang's impatient, urging voice could be heard beside his ear. "Perhaps it was your call that awakened the Divine Emperor's obsession with you before he passed away. If I rush in now, I might still have a chance to see the remnant will of the God Monarch." Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as her pupils contracted. She hurriedly took off the Azure Water 5-piece set. The girl's slender fingers trembled slightly. Holding the Azure Water Divine weapon, he pressed it into the stone door, and it floated around the human-shaped totem in the shape of the 5 accessories. Because he was nervous, she missed several times. Finally, the 5 divine artifacts were all embedded in the totems. She pursed her lips, and with a flick of her finger, a drop of blood gushed out. She placed her blood on the totem. After that, Yiqing Luo only felt a gush of warm spring energy, slowly flowing through her limbs and bones, as if there was a pair of warm arms gently embracing her body, as if it could gently accommodate her everything. Trash 7th Young Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash 7th Young Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5148. It was so strange, yet so familiar. This feeling was totally different from before. It wasn't that she hadn't tried to touch this stone door before. However, the power of the stone door made her feel extremely uncomfortable and painful, although it was all for her own good. But now, it was so warm that her heart was in a mess. It made her not want to open her eyes, only wanted to sink into this pair of warm arms, to enjoy the only warm moment that belonged to her and her mother. It seemed to have sensed Yiqing Luo's thoughts. That pair of warm arms gently patted her head. Yiqing Luo, even vaguely, seemed to hear an ethereal and gentle low laugh, like a warm breeze brushing past her ears. It warmed her body and mind. Yiqing Luo endured the sourness of her nose and murmured, "Mother," that ethereal and gentle low laugh, melodious. Vaguely, she seemed to hear a voice, gently saying to her, "Go, child." By the time Yiqing Luo regained her senses, she was already standing in the dark tomb chamber. "Mother?" Yiqing Luo turned around and looked around, trying to find that familiar yet strange figure. But the surroundings were pitch black, and there was no energy fluctuation. Only her voice reverberated in the tomb chamber. It was not like what she had imagined. The moment she entered the tomb chamber, she would see her mother's remaining obsession. But she could feel that there was a pair of warm eyes, looking at her gently, looking at her. Her mother was still by her side. Yiqing Luo tightened her slender fingers to calm herself down. Since she had already entered the divine emperor's tomb, her mother's tomb chamber, it was not far from her reunion with her mother. Yiqing Luo took out a luminous pearl and was ready to find the way to the tomb chamber. When a luminous pearl shone on the surrounding scene, Yiqing Luo was stunned. She was now in a deep and long cave. That was not the point. The point was, why did the surrounding environment look so familiar? Why did it feel? She seemed to have been here several times. She had an eidetic memory. Yiqing Luo could almost ascertain where she was at right now. Here, wasn't it the Yi family ancestor's tomb that she had been to before? Yes, the tomb of the Yi clan's ancestor. Before she had transmigrated, she had been tricked by a group of Yi clan elders into going in to look for the Azure Dew bracelet. She had made a trip into the tomb of the Yi clan ancestors. That was the tomb of the Yi family's ancestors that she had entered in the 21st century because of the vast water divine artifact. Why was his mother's tomb so similar to the tomb of the Yi family's ancestors? Yiqing Luo harbored such a perturbed heart as she followed her memory and walked towards the inside of the tomb, which was the place where the coffin was placed. Everything was exactly the same as what he remembered. The formation in the tomb chamber that extended in all directions was also the same. Even with her eyes closed, Yiqing Luo was still able to move forward accurately. As expected, you've returned. A gloomy voice came from not far away. That faint and cold tone seemed to ripple out in the tomb chamber. When it entered Yiqing Luo's ears, it made Yiqing Luo feel a chill from head to toe. Yiqing Luo stopped in her tracks and accurately located the direction of the voice. The expression on her face had some subtle changes. Old Mu, long time no see. The owner of that voice was the tomb guardian of the Yi family's ancestors' tomb. Yiqing Luo had met him twice before. Waste 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Waste 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5149. When she saw the graveyard guardian, Yiqing Luo was completely certain. This place was indeed the Yi family's ancestors' tomb. No, or rather, the so-called Yi family's ancestors' tomb had always been the God Emperor's tomb. But the previous Yi family's ancestors' tomb was what her mother wanted her to see, an ordinary Yi family's ancestors' tomb. Yiqing Luo looked at the graveyard guardian, which had floated in front of her. In her memory, it had a fiery temper, the old tomb which would smack her head if there was a disagreement. But the current him had a deep and solemn expression. It stared at Yiqing Luo. Its brows were filled with melancholy. Finally, it sighed, I knew long ago there would be such a day. It turned around and floated back the way it came. The God Emperor's tomb will eventually appear, and you will eventually awaken the God Emperor's power. Fate really can't be avoided. Yiqing Luo didn't really understand what he meant by those confusing words. The graveyard guardian's spiritual body floated very slowly. Yiqing Luo followed behind it, pursed her lips slightly and asked, Old tomb, what you've been guarding right from the start is my mother's tomb, which is the God Emperor's tomb, right? The graveyard guardian laughed lightly. Haven't you already guessed it when you stepped into this place? It floated forward and said, At the right time, you'll be able to open the real tomb's door, and this is your unavoidable fate. The God Emperor's Emperor has really put in a lot of effort for you. Yiqing Luo could hear the deeper meaning in the graveyard guardian's words. She roughly understood some of it. The graveyard guardian's ultimate motive for guarding the God Emperor's tomb was to wait for her to awaken. Previously, she had come to this motive twice. It was all because the God Emperor's emperor wanted her to see it, and to let her slowly understand her own identity. He used this method to deliver what the Emperor of the Divine Emperor wanted to give to her. And this time, to find the God Emperor's tomb and use the Azure Aqua artifact to open the God Emperor's tomb, which was the real, unlocking the seal of the God Emperor's tomb. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes slightly, looking at the cherry blossom Azure Aqua bracelet on her wrist. She curls her lips and says, "I know, my mother has always loved me." Even though Feng Ge did not exist in her memories, but everything Feng Ge had done, she could clearly feel Feng Ge's love. Her mother, even when he passed away, he had arranged everything for her clearly. "We're here." The graveyard guardian's spiritual body stopped leading the way. Yiqing Luo paused. It seemed that they had not reached the coffin area of the inner circle. Following the sight of the graveyard guardian, Yiqing Luo saw, in front, on the right side of the coffin, there was a narrow hole that could only fit one person. The Divine Emperor's tomb has been opened, and the seal is gradually being removed. The graveyard guardian's voice was light. "Hurry up and go in. The power of the God Emperor needs you to inherit it." In other words, when the seal on the tomb of the Divine Emperor was lifted, everyone in the outside world would know the location of the Divine Emperor's tomb. Yiqing Luo was very clear that the inheritance power of the Divine Emperor and the things in the Divine Emperor's tomb. How many people in the outside world were thinking of ways to plunder? Especially Umbra Palace. One must know that Umbra Palace's motive right from the start was the Divine Emperor's tomb. Not to mention, there were countless other forces. Even when DMO Xian went to the lower realm, Nirvana realm, it was also for the profound flame Tianshu map, which was the map to the Divine Emperor's tomb. Trash 7th Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash 7th Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 5150. So, how many people were interested in the whereabouts of the Divine Emperor's tomb? She must complete her mother's wish for her to inherit the power of the Divine Emperor before the seal of the Divine Emperor's tomb was completely lifted. Yiqing Luo smiled at the tomb guardian as she said softly, "Thank you." After that, she stepped into the small cave. What entered her eyes wasn't any complicated array or messy mechanism. It was a vast and empty area. In the middle of it all lay an enormous coffin, which emanated a frigid aura. It was made from 10,000-year-old frigid ice. That coffin was white and transparent, like a thick layer of ice condensed into a ball. Her vision fell onto the coffin, not knowing why. Her eyes were already red. She stretched out her hand to touch her face and discovered that it was wet. Even she herself didn't know when she had tears streaming down her face. The agitation and apprehension in her heart, and the nervousness when she saw the coffin. It made her stand on the spot, unable to move, as if her feet had 1,000 pounds of weight. She wanted to go forward to take a look at her mother in the coffin, but she was so nervous that she had forgotten how to move. Originally thought that she could be very calm, but when it really came to this, all the psychological construction was just self-righteousness. The complicated feelings in her heart made it difficult for her to even breathe. This was true kinship. Blood was thicker than water. She stared blankly at the wet hands. All of a sudden, she felt a chilly sensation on her back, but it was also an extremely warm sensation that pressed close to her, like a pair of warm hands, encircling her in a slightly cold embrace. "My child, my Luo," a clear, choked voice rang clearly beside Yiqing Luo's ears. A drop of icy cold tear fell on her body. Yiqing Luo's petite body, almost at this moment, tensed up. That voice filled with bitterness and longing made Yiqing Luo's heart as if it was tightly gripped. Tears flowed out uncontrollably. That familiar voice. All along, when she couldn't hold on, it had been giving her encouragement teaching her to move forward. That familiar gentleness. It was the warmth that she had once unknowingly felt. Mother. She opened her mouth, choking with sobs. It turned out that her mother had been silently guarding her all this time. In his own way, guardian her. Yiqing Luo's hand slowly used the strength on her waist to cover that pair of slightly icy cold hands. It's very soft. It's his mother's hand. Luo, that gentle voice choked with emotion. My Luo, you've suffered. Yiqing Luo clung onto her mother's hand as she slowly turned around. Behind him was a slightly transparent spirit body. She wore a blazing phoenix robe embroidered with lifelike phoenix flowers. As the skirt fluttered in the wind, numerous phoenix flowers bloomed. That face. Indeed, she was 70% similar to her. She hugged the spiritual body that seemed like it would dissipate at any moment. Mother, I've finally met you. Fenggu, who had gentle features and tears in her eyes, hugged the person in her arms tightly. Her longing for her daughter for the past 10,000 years completely collapsed when her daughter called her mother. 10,000 years of pride and strength. At this moment, there was no way to suppress it. Fenggu sobbed softly as she gently patted Yiqing Luo's back, her voice choked and happy. I thought, you would hate me. Fenggu's spiritual form. Her body didn't have the warmth of a human and was slightly cold. But other than that, she was no different from a human. 17 Waist 7th Young Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Waist 7th Young Miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-51. Yiqing Luo hugged this unfamiliar yet reassuring cold embrace tightly. Her voice was hoarse, and she suppressed her emotions, hate. Back when she found out that she wasn't the daughter of the Yi family, she indeed hated Fenggu. But this hatred was only hatred for being abandoned by her biological parents without knowing anything. There wasn't even a single reason. Hearing her daughter's reply of hate, Fenggu's petite body trembled slightly. The next moment, Yiqing Luo's voice rang again, but later on I found out that everything Mother did was to protect me. That so-called hatred all turned into gratitude. She hugged Fenggu's waist as her little head rubbed against her chest. I know Mother has suffered a lot for me. Even now, in order to meet me, you have sacrificed a lot. She raised her head and looked at this close proximity, familiar yet unfamiliar face, which made her feel incomparably intimate. Her voice was hoarse as she called out once again, Mother, I miss you very much. Sigh. Fenggu replied chokingly, Mother misses you too. Mother and daughter had finally met after being separated for 10,000 years, although they were separated by yin and yang. But their longing was like water from a broken dam, gushing down unceasingly. One human and one spiritual body hugged each other tightly, conveying the longing between them. After experiencing 2 lifetimes, Yiqing Luo felt that she was so strong that nothing could make her lose control of her emotions. But now, the one who was crying in Fenggu's arms was also her. But Yiqing Luo didn't feel embarrassed. Yiqing Luo finally calmed down. At the same time, when the two of them were expressing their longing, Yiqing Luo also roughly understood from Fenggu's mouth the reason why she was handed over to the blood-bone barbaric king. That year, Fenggu and Yiqing Luo's father were engaged. Fenggu's love was vigorous and vigorous, to the extent that she totally didn't listen to anyone's advice as she loved the man wholeheartedly. After that, she gave birth to the man's child. Just like any ordinary woman's thoughts, she thought that as long as she gave birth to the child, for the sake of the child, Feng family would definitely be able to accept the man and understand her deep love for the man. But what she didn't expect was, all the changes happened right after she gave birth to the child. She had never thought, the man and her together. It wasn't because of love. It was premeditated. She noticed a strange look on the man's face. She noticed that the way the man looked at the child was not the way a father looked at his daughter, but a greedy look. There were suspicions. He would pay more attention. When the child was less than 3 months old, then she realized the man attempted to dig out his daughter's heart and take away the profound heart jade that was being nurtured there. Panicking, she stopped the man's evil deed and ran away with her daughter. Since they had shed all pretense of cordiality, the man didn't try to hide it. The two of them began to fight. Fongo was worried about her daughter in her arms. Moreover, her opponent was the man she loved deeply, so she naturally had some reservations when she attacked. However, the man's every move contained a thick, killing intent, especially the moves the man used and the profound chi fluctuations on his body. It was something she had never seen before, especially the man's body. The yin energy swirling around him didn't seem like a proper person at all. Most importantly, in front of her, the man had always been as gentle as jade. His strength was not too strong, and his talent was also ordinary. This was also one of the reasons why she thought that the Feng family was unwilling to accept men. But obviously, everything was not like what Fongo had imagined. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-52. The man's strength was on par with hers. No, or rather, the man was merciless and his methods were ruthless. Fongo, who was in a state of shock and apprehension, was no match for the man. In the end, she could only take the chance to escape with the child while he was unprepared. Following that, she issued an order as the Emperor of the Gods. Her child and the man disappeared together, and the entire god realm searched for the whereabouts of the child and the man. Following that, Fongo quietly entrusted the child to the barbaric Blood King. As a mother, she had to be strong. For the child, no matter how deeply she loved the man, she would never allow the man to hurt her daughter, especially how deep her love was, how deep her hatred was now. The man had been deceiving her from the beginning, falling in love with her and letting her give birth to the child. Everything was for the sake of the child who nurtured the divine phoenix, profound jade heart. Later on, it was the battle between the two for the child. This battle was the nightmare of the god realm, and it ended with both perishing together. Yes, perishing together. Feng Ji's death was to kill the man, and before she died, she used her remaining strength to send Yi Qing Luo's soul to another world, the 21st century. She had arranged all the paths for Yi Qing Luo. In the 21st century, in the most beautiful era where there was no war, she wanted to live well in the Yi family that she had built. But she had miscalculated one thing and underestimated fate. Yi Qing Luo listened to Fongo talking about the past and was only a little surprised. So, the Yi Qing Luo in the Nirvana realm is actually the real me. And the reason why I am in the 21st century is because Mother specially sent me over for my safety. Actually, regarding her connection with this foreign world, Yi Qing Luo had already guessed it. Compared to the time she lived in the 21st century, she could feel more clearly. This foreign world was where she belonged. Mother thought, I had arranged everything to protect you for the rest of your life, but I didn't expect. I couldn't fight against fate. You still came back. Fongo gently brushed aside the stray hair on the young lady's cheek. I'm happy to see you. I'm happy that you are here, but she sighed softly. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing for you to come back here. Of course it's good. Yi Qing Luo replied without hesitation. It's good to be able to reunite with Mother. Fongo smiled. Her long and narrow eyes curved, and her smile was like a blossoming rose. Yi Qing Luo's arms encircled Feng Ji's waist as she placed her head on her shoulder, like an ordinary daughter, acting coquettishly towards her mother. The most important thing is, I've already appeared here, so there's no room for assumptions. That was right. No matter how worried Fongo was, what happened had already happened. There was no way to change it. Feng Ji's hand touched the girl's face. As the girl's fingertips turned cold, a thin layer of skin peeled off, revealing a face that resembled Feng Ji's. The rims of Feng Ji's eyes turned redder as she held Yi Qing Luo's face in her hands. Her eyes were sparkling with tears. Mother's Luo, you've really grown up. Yi Qing Luo could clearly see her own reflection in her mother's crystal-clear eyes. She suddenly pursed her pink lips tightly, grabbed Feng Ji's hand tightly, and looked at Feng Gu seriously and solemnly. Following that, she asked word by word, "Mother, is there any way to let you stay?" Waste 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Waste 7th young miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-53. As soon as she said that, Feng Ji's hand on the young lady's face paused slightly. That icy cold touch brushed past Yi Qing Luo's face and finally drooped down powerlessly. Yi Qing Luo intercepted Feng Ji's hand and held it tightly. "Mother, there must be a way, right?" Old Man Song could be in the form of a guardian spirit in the Azure Dew bracelet, and he could use the Azure Dew artifact to let Old Man Song turn back into a human. Then, there must be a way to let her mother survive. Silly child. Feng Gu smiled gently and raised her hand to touch her head. Mother can see you again and hug you like this. That's already very satisfying. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips pursed again. She was not reconciled and wanted to say something. But Feng Gu smiled gently and shook her head at her, then stretched out both hands and held her slender shoulders. 10,000 years ago, I should have disappeared. Now that I can see you grown up and seeing how outstanding you are, I have nothing else to ask for. She paused slightly and continued in a joking tone. The only regret is, Mother has no way to personally meet that man who will accompany you for life. No way to personally hand you over to him. There must be a way. There must be. Yi Qing Luo immediately held Feng Ji's hand tightly. He is outside now. If you want to see him, you will definitely see him. It's too late. Feng Gu smiled gently and raised her head. Mother doesn't have much time to be able to talk so much with you. Is already an extravagant hope. She held Yi Qing Luo's hand tightly and smiled gently. Now let Mother complete. Mother's last wish for 10,000 years. Yi Qing Luo realized something. Her heart twitched violently. She said in a panic, "Mother," before she could finish her words. Her wrist tightened. After that, she was pulled by Feng Gu and pressed next to that transparent coffin. An icy cold current seeped into her body. Feng Gu held Yi Qing Luo's hand and pressed it on the coffin. Don't resist. Accept the Divine Phoenix's inheritance and inherit the position of Divine Emperor. Feng Ji's gentle voice rang in her ears. Yi Qing Luo's heart was filled with panic. She struggled to get up. I don't want to accept the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix. Mother, it was so difficult for us to meet again. I don't want this. How could she not understand the meaning behind Feng Ji's words? Once she inherited the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix, Feng Gu would completely disappear from this world. Mother, don't you still want to see my him? He must be on his way to the cemetery right now. Just wait a little longer. Just wait a little longer. Yi Qing Luo resisted. The bone-chilling coldness and the surging power caused her body and mind to feel extreme pain. She didn't want to see her mother, whom she had just met, disappear from her world again. As long as Xian must have a way. Xian would definitely have a way. Yi Qing Luo's heart was in a mess. The feeling of losing someone important to her made it almost impossible for her to think calmly. Luo, don't be stubborn. Feng Ji's voice was still gentle, but this time it was serious. Her pair of gentle and serene, beautiful eyes met the young girl's. Mother also wants to accompany you, but you should accept this reality. The you now shouldn't be restricted to me. There are more important things waiting for you to do. Accept the Divine Phoenix's inheritance. Accept Mother's last wish. Trash 7th miss. Overlord, be gentle. Trash 7th miss. Overlord, be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-54. Then, replace Mother and become a qualified Emperor of Divine Emperors. Her beautiful eyes were filled with irresistible seriousness and graveness. Yiqing Luo was unable to reject it. She was smart. How could he not know? The so-called Divine Emperor's tomb was found 10,000 years ago. Before his mother passed away, for her, he had paved a path of retreat. She, who possessed the Divine Phoenix's profound heart jade, possessed the ability to control the vast water divine weapon. If she lived forever in the 21st life. As a result, no one had been able to use the Azure Water Divine artifact or the bloodline of the Divine Emperor's descendant to open this tomb. But if she came back to this other world, then the tomb of the Divine Emperor was her escape route. Obtaining the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix and inheriting the throne of the Divine Emperor, she would have enough power to protect herself, the people or things she wanted to protect. He also has enough power to fulfill his mother's wish. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes tightly and relaxed her body. She did not know how much time had passed. He only knew after the chilliness eroded him. Then it was like a ball of raging fire. It was as if it wanted to burn everything in the world and devour her completely. That ball of fire was like a raging sea wave, rolling and surging unceasingly. Yiqing Luo felt that she was about to be burnt into slag. In his body, the majestic and thick dark force spread to his limbs and bones. Yiqing Luo could faintly sense that those profound energy had formed into cherry blossoms within her body, just like the totem of the Azure Dew bracelet. Yiqing Luo wanted to feel it in detail. Suddenly, the surging power froze in place. Old Man Song's voice reached his ears. Not good. Someone broke in. Someone? Yiqing Luo's mind swayed and was just about to open her eyes. Feng Ji's firm voice rang in his ears again. Don't move. Concentrate. Yiqing Luo gritted her teeth, hesitating in her heart. Feng Gu emphasized, if you don't want to waste all your previous efforts, focus. If you are distracted now, the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix will fail. Do you know the consequences of failure? You only have one chance. Once he failed, that was to destroy the path her mother had paved for her over the past 10,000 years. Once he failed, the inheritance of the Divine Phoenix would forever stop with her generation. Yiqing Luo could not imagine the consequences of failure. She took a deep breath, calmed herself down, and focused her mind. Bang! At the same time, the graveyard suddenly shook. The entire graveyard shook. Two tightly entangled figures rushed into the tomb chamber at an extremely fast speed. The entire majestic graveyard seemed to be on the verge of collapse at this moment. On the verge of collapse. Boulders flew in all directions and fell to the ground. A figure shrouded in a black robe quickly followed the aura. Behind him, there was a slender figure chasing after him relentlessly. Just as the black-robed figure was about to rush into the inner circle, the tyrannical, profound strength came crashing down, blocking the path in front. The man in the bamboo robe landed lightly in front of the black-robed figure. Scram! That sinister and cold voice was filled with tyrannical, killing intent. The man's obedient and harmless face and his deep azure eyes caused people to tremble with fear. Out of the corner of his eye, he glanced in the direction of the inner circle. He did not respond to the black-robed figure's words, nor did he intend to move. Overlord, what's the use of you blocking me? That black-robed figure snorted coldly. Why not? The both of us cooperate. As long as the both of us join forces, not to mention the God realm, even if we want the entire foreign world, it will be within our reach. The black-robed voice's sinister voice revealed an inexplicable bewitchment. Trash 7th miss. Overlord, please be gentle. Trash 7th miss. Overlord, please be gentle. 44,143 Dextulp. Chapter 51-55. The man looked at the black-robed figure expressionlessly as his dark red thin lips moved slightly, not interested. These three simple and calm words made the black-robed voice's viciousness intensified by several notches. Overlord, a man should fight for his great cause. Is it worth it to waste all your abilities just for a so-called love affair? How would a heartless person understand? DMO Xian's expression was icy cold as his sleeves fluttered and boundless profound rays surged. The black-robed figure cursed in a low voice. Both parties crossed hands once again. The commotion in the tomb grew louder and louder. Intense, profound rays broke through the secret chamber and shot straight into the clouds. Yiqing Luo didn't need to think to know. Now it must be God Realm or Devil Region. That group of people with extraordinary abilities. They were heading towards the Divine Emperor's tomb. Bam! Yiqing Luo felt her body shaking violently. She heard the sound of gravel hitting the ground. Someone had already invaded the inner periphery of the tomb. Invaded the place where her mother's coffin was placed. How could someone find their way here so quickly? Concentrate, Fonga bellowed in a low voice. Yiqing Luo's body kept shaking as she forced herself not to be affected by anything else, enduring the scorching flames from the Divine Phoenix's inheritance. DMO Xian stopped him in time, and the black-robed figure had yet to get close to Yiqing Luo, interrupting her from receiving the inheritance. The black-robed figure looked at the young lady who had her eyes closed and had no rejection from the Divine Emperor's inheritance. That sinister and treacherous face under the black robe started to twist. The black-robed figure's eyes suddenly turned cold as he stared fiercely at Lin Mo Xian's direction. Under the black robe, that pair of icy cold eyes seemed to be gathering a gloomy frost. Mo Xian frowned. Looking at that pair of icy cold eyes, the corners of his eyes raised slightly. He cautiously leaned towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Overlord, do you really think that you can stop me? That black robe's voice was spat out coldly. He suddenly lifted the black robe and flung it upwards. The raging Yin-Chi suddenly burst forth in the tomb chamber, which was on the verge of collapse. It brought along a strong, ferocious, majestic, and vigorous energy. The entire tomb was almost overturned. Since I dare to come, then naturally, I am fully prepared. Mo Xian had just moved. That figure who had already taken off his black robe and was dressed in a black outfit was like a poisonous snake as he blocked Mo Xian's way. Following that, the black robe that was flipped over on the ground fluttered even though there was no wind. A deep black, profound Yin-Chi with an icy cold, murderous intent wrapped around Yiqing Luo. Luo. DMO Xian's pupils contracted as he hurriedly turned around and headed towards Yiqing Luo's direction. He didn't care at all. The black-robed figure was still wrapped around him. The black-robed figure smiled coldly. Venerable Sovereign, the biggest taboo in a battle is to leave one's back to the enemy. How could a dignified venerable sovereign make such a mistake? The black-robed figure raised his palm and struck towards DMO Xian's back. In the meantime, the dense, mysterious Yin-Chi fiercely rushed towards the young girl, like a bloody mouth baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, wanting to completely swallow the young girl. The terrifying and cold black light engulfed the young girl. The palm wind, which was filled with vigorous and boundless energy, fell towards Mo Xian's back. Yiqing Luo's entire body started to shake violently. As the power of the Divine Phoenix's inheritance washed through his limbs and bones. The moment the man worriedly said Luo's expression changed. The young girl opened her eyes abruptly. Between those long and narrow eyes, the fiery red glow was sparkling brilliantly. That pair of pupils were covered with a blood-red color. That ferocious, profound Yin-Chi could not cover the young girl's red eyes. Chapter 51-56. It was the Palace of Darkness. The people from the Palace of Darkness. The Palace of Darkness actually came so fast. Yi Qing Luo's blood-red eyes flashed. She couldn't let the profound Yin Qi touch her. She couldn't break the divine phoenix's inheritance. This was the only chance. She absolutely couldn't let her mother down. But that surging profound Yin Qi was like an arrow leaving the bow, instantly swallowing her face. Yi Qing Luo's breath froze. She couldn't evade it. Even if DMO Xian was attacked by that palm wind, he was still a step too slow. Feng family's lass, Feng family's everything. I'll leave it to you. Suddenly, a light and faintly familiar voice rang beside her ear. Yi Qing Luo saw a transparent and illusory figure blocking in front of her. Yi Qing Luo's pupils suddenly constricted. Her pink lips trembled, silently spitting out two words, old tomb. The tomb guardian's spiritual body was instantly dispersed by that profound Yin Qi. In Yi Qing Luo's blood-red eyes, the only reflection was, it was the tomb guardian before he disappeared. To her, the first and also the last. Smile. And also because of the tomb guardian's obstruction. It made the profound Yin Qi pause for a few breaths. And it was this moment of pause. DMO Xian had already reached Yi Qing Luo in time. With a wave of his hand, the profound ray surged, lifting that raging profound Yin Qi. Yi Qing Luo's vision fell on that man's dark red thin lips, overflowing with blood, just like the redness of her eyes. Just now, in order to rush towards her, DMO Xian disregarded his own safety, allowing that black-robed figure to strike out a palm on his body. Ah, Xian! Her throat was slightly hoarse. She felt as if there was a fire burning her throat. That palm, the opponent didn't hold back at all. DMO Xian also suffered that palm, forcefully, without any protective measures. He suffered it all, just to rush to her side. The tomb guardian died for her. Ah Xian was injured for her. All because of her. If earlier, the tomb guardian didn't block in front of her, the current her would probably have been swallowed by the profound Yin Qi. If earlier, Ah Xian didn't break the profound Yin Qi in time, the current her would probably not survive. It was her incompetence that had harmed them. In Yi Qing Luo's pupils, there seemed to be raging waves surging. There was a sudden buzz in her head. The crimson light in his eyes shot out a dazzling light. A powerful rainbow light burst out from his body, and he suddenly dashed away. The cherry blossom bracelet on his wrist shot out a fiery rainbow. The burning sensation on his chest was like the power of the divine phoenix profound heart jade surging out of his body. The entire chamber suddenly exploded. The girl, sitting cross-legged in front of the coffin, was emitting a fiery red glow. At this moment, his aura continued to skyrocket. The tomb has exploded. Is the Emperor of the Divine Emperors coming back to life? Quick, get closer and take a look. In the tomb of the Divine Emperors, there must be many divine artifacts buried with the former Divine Emperors. The tomb of the Divine Emperor has exploded. It exploded. Countless discussions resounded throughout the entire Devil Destruction Mountain. The people from the Fiend Domain, who had not dared to take even half a step into Devil Destruction Mountain, as well as the people from the outside world, were now gathered around Devil Destruction Mountain. The red glow spread across the entire Devil Destruction Mountain. The Divine Phoenix Legacy had ended. Yi Qing Luo slowly moved her 5 fingers. The red glow on her body slowly dissipated. Finally, it disappeared into the cherry blossom totem on the young girl's forehead. The young girl's figure floated in midair. The red glow lingered, her jet black hair flying. Her peach-red dress fluttered with the wind, making a fluttering sound. Chapter 51-57. Everyone's gaze was fixed on a young lady who was floating in midair. The sky was filled with flaming dark rays, pouring down and covering the entire sky. The entire Demon Destruction Mountain was covered in a layer of red light. It was as if flames were burning the entire demon destruction mountain. That is it the Empress of the Divine Emperors? Is it? Useless Seventh Lady. Lord Dizun, please be gentle. Chapter 51-58. It is indeed you, the person behind the scenes of the gloomy palace. 3. Please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 51-58. Too bad this power does not belong to you. The young lady's clear voice was filled with extreme coldness, with a hint of ridicule. Her slender fingers flicked, and the silver strands shrunk even tighter. The black-robed man's face revealed a pained expression. The young lady's pink lips rose slightly as she smiled indifferently. Do you really think that by stopping me from inheriting the God Emperor's inheritance, you will be able to get my mother's inheritance? She raised her leg slowly and stepped on the man's body. A strong and domineering aura was emitted from her body, like a king who was above the 9 heavens. And the person she was stepping on was merely an ant that could be easily pinched to death. That kind of almighty and unattainable. Too bad. The designated successor is me, and the person who is recognized by the Divine Phoenix's inheritance is also me. Yiqing Luo laughed softly as the profound rays were as sharp as a sharp blade, falling onto the man's body. And you have to pay the price for killing Old Mu and injuring Ah Xian. The man let out a muffled groan as he forcefully endured the overwhelming profound light. The silver strands fixed him in place, and he had no way to resist, so he could only bear it. You look so pathetic, the young lady muttered sarcastically. I'm afraid you've never been in such a pathetic state before. Palace of Darkness, the mastermind. When a young lady said the last 4 words, that black-robed man's pained expression froze slightly. He gritted his teeth and squeezed out the words, How did you know? My identity? This Devil Extermination Mountain is Palace of Darkness's territory in the Devil region, which means Palace of Darkness roughly knows the location of the God Emperor's sovereign. But because of the Demon Dragon King's seal, the God Emperor's sovereign's aura was concealed. The mastermind of Palace of Darkness has repeatedly found trouble with me and created so many troubles. Isn't it because they want to obtain the profound flame diagram from me and find the God Emperor's tomb to obtain the God Emperor's inheritance? So, to be able to rush to my mother's tomb in such a short time and attempt to stop me from receiving the inheritance. Other than the mastermind of Palace of Darkness, I can't think of anyone else. Listening to the young lady's patient explanation, although the man's face was filled with ruthlessness and coldness, one could see that his facial features were regular and handsome. Once again, his face twisted. Suddenly, amidst the pain, he laughed coldly. Your analysis sounds pretty good. However, you're wrong about one thing. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. I established my secret faction in Devil Destruction Mountain not because I know the location of the Divine Emperor's tomb. Or rather, I have no clue about the Divine Emperor's tomb. He grinned coldly. Otherwise, why would I send so many people to hunt down that pair of impostors who followed the Bone Sovereign? Hearing Secluded Palace's mastermind denying it, Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. Her analysis? Wrong? If the other party did not know the location of the tomb of the Divine Sovereign, how could he possibly find his way here so quickly? Something was definitely wrong. He's right. He doesn't know the location of this Emperor's tomb. Suddenly, a slightly weak and extremely ethereal voice rang out leisurely in everyone's ears. When Yiqing Luo heard that voice, she immediately turned around. Amidst the raging flames, she could faintly see a figure floating towards her. On seeing that figure, Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. Mother! Chapter 51-59. She originally thought her mother had used up the last of her obsession to complete the transmission to her. After that, just like the Tomb Guardians, disappeared from the world. Because of this, before the God Emperor's power had completely merged with her body, she started to take action against the people behind the secluded palace. Old Tomb's death, Xian's injury, coupled with her mother's disappearance. All of his anger was suppressed in this instant. Now that she saw that her mother was still around, Yiqing Luo's agitation was imaginable. Feng Ji's movement speed wasn't fast. As he floated over neither too fast nor too slow, his voice was brimming with anger and coldness. Because when I built this tomb chamber, it was built to deal with him. She enunciated every word clearly. Feng Ge came to Yiqing Luo's side. That blazing red dress, under the dazzling red light, seemed illusory and dreamy, as though the next moment it would merge into the red light, disappearing. This made Yiqing Luo's heart feel unbearably tight. She clenched her slender fingers as she stretched out her hand to support Feng Ge. Her voice sounded a little tight, "Mother." However, Feng Ge avoided her touch. Indistinctly, it seemed to brush past an extremely cold chill. Yiqing Luo's hand paused. "Mother?" Feng Ge gave her a gentle smile. Then her vision turned towards the black-robed man. That pair of beautiful eyes were filled with resentment and hatred which others couldn't understand. She congealed that familiar yet unfamiliar face as though it was a lifetime ago. No, it was indeed a lifetime ago. After all, Yin and Yang were separated by 10,000 years. She chuckled softly. That faint cold laughter had a chill which made one's scalp go numb. "Huang Wuyo, you didn't expect this, right? This empress not only schemed against you 10,000 years ago, today, I still schemed against you." She said every word clearly, with emphasis on her words. The black-robed man stared at that illusory figure without blinking, as fury surged in his eyes. Hearing Feng Ge's ridicule, he gritted his teeth, but before he opened his mouth, he laughed out loudly. "Schemed against this seat? Using your life to plot against me? It's a pity. You calculated everything, but you didn't calculate that after 10,000 years, the daughter you've always been protecting, in other words, my own daughter, will personally undo the seal that you, the mother, personally laid down." After he finished speaking, he burst into laughter. The silver threads wrapped around his body tightened in an instant. He only let out a muffled groan and took a few heavy breaths. But as he coughed, he laughed incessantly. "Shut up." Feng Ge's face darkened, and her beautiful eyes turned sharp. "What right do you have to say that? Luo is my daughter, my only daughter." She took a deep breath and tried her best to maintain her trembling spirit body. "Huang Wuyo, don't be too happy. 10,000 years ago, I was able to seal you. 10,000 years later, my daughter, the one who will inherit the royal bloodline of the divine emperor, my daughter will definitely seal you again. Or even kill you." Feng Ge spat out the last 3 words one by one. The black-robed man, who was addressed as Huang Wuyo, heard Feng Ge's words, but there wasn't a single trace of panic on his face. Instead, his lips curled upwards, that pair of sinister eyes, which seemed to be filled with all the evil in the world, looked towards Yiqing Luo with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Following that, he laughed, "But she is also my daughter. A daughter who kills her father will be punished." Chapter 51-60. Are you even fit to be called father? Feng Ji's voice was trembling. Her eyes seemed to be burning with a scarlet-red glow. "Huang Wuyo, you're not qualified. Not qualified to call me father." The conversation between the two fell into Yiqing Luo's ears. Like a sudden clap of thunder, Yiqing Luo's mind went into a daze. Biological daughter? Father. The mastermind of the secluded palace, that man called Huang Wuyo. Was it her father? The man who had deceived her mother and schemed everything, just to dig open her heart and take away the divine phoenix's profound heart jade. That man. She must have heard wrongly, right? How could this be possible? Yiqing Luo's breathing stagnated, unable to regain her senses from Huang Wuyo and Feng Ji's conversation, because she knew that she didn't hear wrongly. She also knew that they weren't joking, and she knew that there were actually many things that could be traced. That was why she was in such a daze. That was the mastermind of the secluded palace who killed people like flax, played with people's hearts, created chaos, and attempted to dominate various realms. She actually had such a relationship with him. Yiqing Luo. Huang Wuyo suddenly shouted at Yiqing Luo. That sinister face, which was covered with a haze, suddenly curled up his lips towards Yiqing Luo. No matter if Ger admits it or not, this seat is your biological father. That is an indisputable fact. Yiqing Luo's expression turned cold as she looked at Yiqing Luo. He could use this sinister and strange emphasis to call out the two words that he had affectionately called her 10,000 years ago. Feng Ge was indeed so angry because of this form of address and his words. So what if I'm your biological father? Yiqing Luo's expression on her face, as her voice became colder. She took a step forward, blocking in front of Feng Ge, and also blocking Huang Wuyo's disgusting gaze. Other than snatching the thing that mother left me, other than playing with the hearts of my brothers, other than one of my life, what other feelings do you have for me? She scoffed lightly, as her eyes were filled with ridicule. Mother is right. What right do you have to lick your face in front of me? You're my father? Her fingertips moved again. The bright silver threads shone brightly, as it entangled Huang Wuyo even tighter. The razor-sharp silver threads pierced into Huang Wuyo's flesh, all the way to his bones. That kind of extreme pain could not be described with words. Regardless of whether what you said is true or false, just based on what you've done, I won't admit it. Yiqing Luo was very calm. Her long and narrow eyes shot out a few rays of light. Even if it is for mother's revenge, I will not let you get what you want. I will not let you have the chance to hurt me and my friends by my side. As she spoke, her tone became heavier and sharper. She tightened her fingers. The black-clothed man in the silver threads didn't even have the chance to scream. Has already dissipated in the river of silver threads vaguely. He seemed to be able to see beads of blood dripping from the silver thread. It's settled? The mastermind of the Dark Shadow Palace was taken care of. The onlookers sucked in a breath of cold air. The interpersonal relationships nowadays were a little complicated. The girl who walked out of the tomb of the Divine Emperor was so cold-blooded and heartless. Some people exclaimed in surprise, while others disagreed. But the crowd's thoughts didn't affect Yiqing Luo. The current Yiqing Luo was frowning tightly as she searched the surroundings vigilantly. Instinct told her, things absolutely couldn't be settled so quickly. Chapter 5161. The mastermind of the secluded palace was sinister and cunning. Since the start of Nirvana Realm, they had been fighting with her till now. How is it possible that he died so easily? Furthermore, earlier when she used the Glower Flame Fan's silver threads to chop him apart, she didn't feel the feeling of killing Huang Wuyo. Yiqing Luo's brows drooped slightly as she stared at the Glower Flame Fan on her fingertips, pondering over the peculiarity. It's no use. Feng Ji's weak voice sounded a little strained. That's not Huang Wuyo's real body. Even if he's dismembered, Huang Wuyo is still alive. Mother. Yiqing Luo kept her thoughts as she looked at Feng Ge worriedly, stretching out her hand to support her. Feng Ge avoided her hand once again as her pale lips curled upwards. That smile was gentle and filled with love towards her, but it was also mixed with helplessness. Yiqing Luo's heart tightened fiercely. Suddenly, she stretched out her hand and held Feng Ji's hand. The moment their skin touched, a wave of ice, like a 1,000-year-old frost, pierced into her body. Her entire body was frozen on the spot. That bone-piercing coldness seemed to turn her into an ice sculpture. Very quickly, Feng Ge reacted and swiftly retreated as her tone was filled with worry. Luo, are you all right? She separated from Feng Ge. The coldness that felt like it was going to pierce into his internal organs gradually subsided. But the coldness in her body was unable to dissipate. She staggered a few steps backwards. Luckily, DMO Xian supported her from behind in time. Yiqing Luo leaned against the man's arms as her pair of charming eyes stared blankly at Fenggu, who was about to blend into the red glow. Her voice trembled slightly. "Mother, you, what's the matter?" When she asked this question, Yiqing Luo already had an answer in her heart. No wonder her mother didn't allow her to touch him. Because her mother now, maintaining her current spiritual form to converse with her, was already very taxing. There was no way to maintain her own temperature. Hugging her normally, Yiqing Luo's heart was like thousands of silver needles, pricking her needle by needle. "Mother is all right." Fenggu smiled gently and continued, "Mother doesn't have much time left. Listen to me carefully." Yiqing Luo stopped the choking in her throat as she concentrated her attention on Fenggu. "Fenggu, 10,000 years ago, I sensed Huang Wuyo's ambition. In order to protect you and send you to a brand new world without war, I exhausted my own strength to seal Huang Wuyo in the demon dragon's lair in the demon domain. I know that I don't have much time left, so when I decided to seal Huang Wuyo, I set up my grave here. It's not that Huang Wuyo knew the location of my tomb, so he established the power of the Palace of Darkness here. It's just that Mother wanted to suppress him and also to prevent him from discovering my true burial place. The most dangerous place was also the safest place. Even if Huang Wuyo racked his brains, he would not be able to figure it out. He had been searching for the whereabouts of the Divine Emperor's tomb. It was right in the place where he was sealed. Huang Wuyo's real body is still sealed under the demon dragon's lair. Earlier, Huang Wuyo was merely an incarnation of a strand of his consciousness. When Fenggu said this, her eyes revealed some seriousness and solemnity as she looked at Yiqing Luo. Based on his current strength, I'm guessing his seal is going to be broken soon. Once he breaks the seal and appears, this strange world will probably fall into an abyss of suffering again. She took a deep breath as her gaze gradually turned resolute and revealed some traces of remorse. "Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love." "Seventh Miss who likes trash. Overlord, please be gentler with your love." Chapter 5162. Mother knows that it's selfish of me to ask you for help now. Fenggu pursed her pale lips. That weak voice was firm again, but Mother still wants. That year, it was Mother's willful act, indulging in the love created by Huang Wuyo, and made a huge mistake, and finally used my life to pay for it. Now, I hope you can complete what I failed to do that year, to stop Huang Wuyo's ambition. If it's possible, I hope you can get rid of all future troubles. When she said the last four words, her voice was choked and hoarse. Yiqing Luo's long eyelashes trembled slightly. Staring at Feng Ji's pale and empty face, he endured the sourness in his heart and nodded hard. Okay, Feng Ji's wish had been achieved. Her face revealed a relaxed and gentle smile. Her gaze was tender as she stared deeply at Yiqing Luo's face. The smile on her lips was a little bitter, but full of satisfaction. "Luo, will you blame me?" Yiqing Luo shook her head. "No. Because I didn't know the right person. You were homeless the moment you were born, without a peaceful life. Because of my obsession, I didn't care about your wishes to pave all the roads, to let you inherit the Divine Phoenix legacy, accept the fate of the Feng family. Now, I don't care about your wishes, making use of your feelings for me, hoping you to deal with your biological father." Feng Ji's eyes were filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I'm not a good mother." No one wished for everything to be arranged for them to move forward, even if it was their own children. Everyone was an independent individual. Parents could give advice and help, but they must never use their own subjective views to arrange their children's future. Fenggu understood this point, but she had no choice. For the common people, in order to stop the world that was about to face the abyss of suffering because of her. She had to make a choice. One, a choice that could change the current situation. So, Yiqing Luo had to bear a heavy fate. Mother, don't doubt your motherly love for me. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand, trying to hold Feng Ji's hand. However, Feng Gu took a step back. Her hand paused in midair. Then, looking at Feng Gu, she tightened her fingers bit by bit. He seemed to hold Feng Ji's hand through the air. She pursed her lips and looked at Feng Gu seriously. Everything you've done is not wrong. In fact, I should be thanking you for sacrificing so much for me. This has always been my fate. Even if Mother didn't want me to walk this path, he would still forcefully make a move against me, forcing me to become his tool. You're a very, very good mother. I'm proud to have a mother like you. Yiqing Luo's pink lips slowly rose into a faint arc, clear and moist like water. Luo. Feng Ji's eyes turned even redder as her gaze turned towards the man behind Yiqing Luo, who had been supporting Yiqing Luo's waist with one hand, standing upright. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. You? Di Zun, she said, her voice a little heavy. Mo Xian's expression was respectful as he nodded slightly. Just call me Mo Xian, mother, when he spat out the last word in an extremely natural manner. Yiqing Luo was stunned for a moment. You're calling me mother just like that? She wasn't married yet. This man, really thick-skinned. Yiqing Luo was cursing in her heart, but her face was burning hot. Chapter 51-63. Feng Gu was stunned for a moment before she smiled. I believe in your sincerity towards Luo for the rest of my life. I will entrust this daughter of mine to you. Her smile seemed as though it would dissipate with the wind at any time. Yiqing Luo's heart vaguely felt something. Her fair fingers clenched Nan Rao's arm tightly as she suppressed her emotions. Mo Xian's expression was respectful and serious as he gave a slight bow towards Feng Gu. Mother, don't worry. Love her, protect her, pamper her, love her. This is what I will use my entire life to do. This was probably the first time in Mo Xian's life that he was so respectful towards someone. That piercingly cold aura which belonged to an overlord was completely concealed. Mo Xian was just an ordinary son-in-law, a son-in-law who was being tested by his future mother-in-law. Feng Gu smiled satisfactorily as she nodded. This daughter of mine is much luckier than me. I believe that you will do your best to fulfill the vow you have made. Mo Xian's gaze was resolute. Yes. Sister. Suddenly, a trembling voice was heard from not too far away. Not too far away, a figure was seen rushing over speedily. That person's robe was in a mess, and his head of black hair was blown into a mess by the strong wind. He rushed over and stopped 3 steps away from Feng Gu. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Feng Gu, without blinking as he panted heavily. When Feng Gu heard this voice, the smile on her face paused for a moment. Her line of sight fell on Na Rao bit by bit. That face, which was similar to hers, was extremely agitated at this moment. Feng Gu smiled slightly. Qiong, you've grown up. She seemed to want to stretch out her hand to caress Feng Li Qiong's head. But thinking of her current physique, she quickly withdrew her hand. Feng Li Qiong's eyes widened as she stared at Feng Gu as her throat tightened uncomfortably. Feng Gu gave her an extremely gentle smile. For so many years, it's all thanks to Qiong for carrying the burden of the Feng family, and also for the sins that sister had committed. She smiled extremely gently. Luckily there's Qiong. Qiong, you will always be sister's best brother. Feng Li Qiong opened her mouth and spat out a word bitterly. No, he didn't. He was not a good younger brother. Feng Ji's death was a huge blow to him, and all his thoughts were distorted. Actually, he had never blamed his sister. Never blamed her because of love, regardless of holding. He just wanted to find an excuse to keep himself going. Persevere. I will protect my sister, the hand that my sister wants to protect. But even so, he had done a lot of wrong things. He didn't have the qualifications to receive his sister's praise. Yes, It's all thanks to Uncle that Feng family and grandfather can survive until today. Yi Qing Luo's tone was full of sincerity. Uncle, he really worships Mother. Feng Ji's smile became even more gentle, and the way she looked at Feng Liqiong also became a little warmer. She seemed to be caressing Feng Liqiong's head through the air. Qiong, from now on, please take care of the Feng family and Luo. You're the eldest son of the Feng family, the pillar of the Feng family. Sis, Feng Liqiong said in a hoarse voice, her eyes welling up with tears. His heart was full of words, but at this moment, he could not say them. A hand was placed on his back. Feng family's patriarch slowly raised his head, looking at this daughter who he had always doted on, loved, but because of a moment of wrong love, had passed away 10,000 years ago. Chapter 5164. That pair of old eyes which had experienced hardships couldn't help but burst into tears. Father, when she saw Patriarch Feng, the expression on Feng Ji's face couldn't hold it in anymore. She cried softly and then knelt down on the ground. Father, I'm unfilial. Patriarch Feng shut his eyes hard. The once all-powerful old man suppressed the sourness in his eyes and made his voice calm and dignified. Everything is over. Don't mention it again. However, his trembling voice still revealed his agitation at this moment. Patriarch Feng looked at the spiritual body, which seemed like it would dissipate when the wind blew, and sighed softly. After that, he looked at Yi Qing Luo. Luo has already accepted the God Emperor's inheritance? Yes, Luo is the appointed successor to the God Emperor. Feng Ji's gaze gently swept over the obvious cherry blossom totem on Yi Qing Luo's forehead. That was the symbol of the God Emperor. Since Yi Qing Luo was born, there was this mark on her forehead. This was the appointed future God Emperor. Luo. Patriarch Feng's voice suddenly became dignified, his tone heavy, and that call also spread to the surroundings through the profound energy. The noisy crowd quieted down at this moment. Patriarch Feng continued, You have already received the God Emperor's inheritance from today onwards. You are the new God Emperor of the God Emperor. You have to shoulder the heavy burden of the God realm, understand? Yi Qing Luo knew. This was her grandfather's way of announcing her current status to everyone. The God Emperor of the God Emperor's inheritance. That was the most orthodox God Emperor of the God Emperor. All the people in the God realm must accept the God Emperor of the God Emperor willingly. When this was said, the God realm was in an uproar. Most of the forces in the God realm had been dominated by the Nether Palace. Even if Feng Liqiong had eliminated many hidden forces, but there were still a lot of them left. When this was said, it immediately attracted the resistance of many God realm cultivators. Patriarch Feng sneered and flicked his sleeves, facing the dense crowd in front. His voice was dignified and cold. Not convinced? Then, who among you can get the God Emperor's inheritance and sit firmly on the God Emperor's position? The Emperor of the former Shenhuang has disappeared for tens of thousands of years, and your Feng family created an acting Shenhuang. To put it bluntly, you just want to occupy the position of Shenhuang and refuse to let go. What? Only the person who obtained the Divine Emperor's inheritance can inherit the Divine Emperor's throne? How do we know that she really got the Divine Emperor's inheritance? Countless people clamored. Bang! A majestic, profound energy suddenly exploded in the middle of the crowd. The group of people who were still clamoring immediately began to scream. The illusory red spiritual body slowly floated into the air and looked down at the people below. That gentleness towards Yi Qing Luo and the Feng family members had vanished. That was the majesty that belonged to the superior, the Emperor of the Divine Emperor. The hurricane blew against her flame-like red robe. Feng Ji's brows were cold, and his words were ruthless. What's wrong with my daughter inheriting the throne? If anyone is dissatisfied, feel free to come and find this emperor. The might of a divine emperor spread throughout the entire Devil Destruction Mountain. The pressure was so great that everyone was almost unable to breathe. Yiqing Luo's heart felt like it was being pricked by needles, and she wanted to go forward to stop Fengge. Her slender waist was held tightly by Dmo Xian. He lowered his eyes, and his voice was gentle and tender. She knows she doesn't have much time left. She only wants to use the remaining time to help you clear the obstacles. Even if you stop her now, it's useless. But if this goes on, Mother will only exhaust all her energy and completely disappear from this world. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.